Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order, this being Tuesday, April 23rd at 6:33 p.m. With me, I have Councilors Murphy, Councilor Anderson Burgos, I'm Councilor Vacan, Councilor Lisi, and Councilor Bartley. I don't see any other councilors in the audience yet. Okay, at our last meeting, we did receive minutes, and I trust everybody had a chance to look at those. So I'd accept a motion on.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion was to accept the
Accept the
minutes? Okay, just verifying. I'll accept a motion to take up item 2 to open the public hearing that was continued.
Table and open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item 2 is a special permit application of Analytics Labs LLC for establishment of a cannabis testing lab at 28C Appleton Street, Suite 3, map 032, block 01, parcel 001. So we had a pretty thorough meeting last time. There were some remaining questions, which everyone should have received a summary sheet and attachments for, members of the committee. We do have a full updated permit application if anybody wants to look at something specific in it. But unless members have specific questions, I'd like to give the applicant the opportunity to just run down the remaining open questions from the top.
Thank
How's
you,
that?
Jack Ferreter, for the applicant.
Thank you.
I had sent electronic copies to everybody on the committee, but if you need a paper copy, I have a couple of extra ones here. The additions that were made to the application were approval from the police department, approval from the fire department, and approval from DPW and city engineer regarding the lack of anything going into the sewer system. Also updated was a more clear locust plan instead of the small one that was in the corner, and a letter from the landlord confirming that the landlord is taking care of office type of waste. And be happy to entertain any questions. Sure.
That's, okay, that's this. All right. So, we received the whole updated application, but separately from that, we received the summary of the updates that we had outstanding, that we had the questions on, that he just went over. Were there any other outstanding questions that any of other members of the committee had, other than the ones that the applicant just went over?
Well, I want to just note that we have a letter from Curtis in the planning department. I think this is it right here. I'm not sure. And it's dated today.
Well, is that for
For the analytics lab. This is different.
yeah, this is not that.
So we received an email communication. I'm not sure if you.
Today?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see one today, so maybe if you could read it into the record? Do you have it now? I haven't seen it.
So there's still a number of questions that are outstanding based on the updated submission of April 18th. These comments come to us on a letter from the planning department dated April 23rd. Have you seen this?
No.
Okay. All right, so I'll just, if you don't mind me starting, do you want me to run through all the questions and then maybe we could back up?
If we could take them one by one, maybe we
Yes,
can
let's
answer
take
them
one
along
by
the
one.
way.
I don't even know
for the
what they
record.
are.
So the first question is, are these plans that have been submitted by email to the city clerk on April 18th, 2019 considered final? Please note that this digital submission may not meet the standards of submission necessary for filing by the city clerk.
So they are the final, and we have submitted, you have paper copies, and we have not heard anything from the clerk that she wants more paper copies, but if she does, we'll be happy to provide them to her.
And I think I had briefly talked with Marcos as the director of planning, and I think he felt that there was some discrepancy between, I know that Jerry, where's Jerry? Jerry, you had said that you were basically mimicking the previous applications that the planning department had received and approved as a template of sorts. And they felt that there was still, I guess, a mismatch, or that the replication wasn't meeting the standards that they were looking for in some way.
So if that's a comment, we haven't received that comment, and so we submitted a thorough application. We had over an hour of public hearing 2 weeks ago. I think we answered all of your questions, all of planning's questions, so I don't know how we can respond if we don't know what, maybe if we go through the letter,
Yep.
We can answer the questions from planning.
Sure. And then the second point is, can the applicant submit a written approval of the site security measures from the Holyoke Chief of Police? And on the note here, it says that you have submitted in your 418 response that letter from the Holyoke Police Department, so that's all good. In the third point, it says that regarding section 7.10.61G, can the applicant submit details of all exterior security measures proposed for the business, such as fencing, lighting, etc.?
So as we said last time, there is no fencing proposed, and as we said last time, there is a plan in the packet that shows where the cameras are. And those are the only exterior security measures. So no new fences and just new cameras, and those are shown on the plans from the very first submittal, actually.
And is there something, just because I'm not looking at it at this moment, but is there something that states that explicitly and references section 7.10.6?
Yes. Yes, it's part of the site plan application.
Can you give me a page number?
I don't think there are page numbers on here, but,
This is it? No, sorry.
so
Copy.
there is an entire security plan that was provided to, the entire security plan was provided to the police department, and by request, it was not submitted to this body.
Correct.
We
Yep.
did pull out
The letter.
portion of the security plan that talked about the cameras, but we were asked not to submit the entire security plan, which does get into detail about fire doors and fire alarms and all that stuff, but we do have sign-off from the police department, we have sign-off from the fire department, and we do have sections in here that discuss security in short form.
So I think in the bullets that you have here, 1 through 10, I think you want to break out another bullet that talks about exterior security measures, and you could just say reference these other documents. But I think that in some way you want to demonstrate that you understand that there is a requirement that the external modifications are listed, and that if they're listed in other parts of the document, that they're referenced.
So I'm happy to write that in tonight. And also there is a plan that shows all the cameras, and the cameras are the only exterior security measures. So it would be redundant for me to write it in, but I'm happy to do that tonight.
Yeah, I think point 11, it would say exterior security measures. Number 1, you have lighting. So I think you want to reference the photometric plan. And then the other point is that you have the cameras. And I know that you have the dome cameras listed here, as well as infrared motion detectors, it seems, but that's only internal, or?
Yes,
Okay.
that's internal, yes.
Yeah, so I think you just want to be able to point to those two documents.
Sure, happy to write that in.
Okay, so for point number 4, it says Development Impact Statement, Section D. Applicant states that lighting will be added to the entryway for security. The applicant should submit a photometric plan and detailed plan to illustrate the proposed exterior lighting. And it says that you have provided the photometric plan, and you will maintain light levels of 1-foot candles. And you further state that the received submission includes a lighting plan from the security plan. So again, you're making that reference, that's fine. That seems to be met. Except that the planning department is saying that they have not received the lighting plan.
So Marcos was included on the email that you all received. So if you all received the photometric plan, then so did Marcos.
I'm not sure, because this is the technical jargon of this particular, department, but I wonder if the photometric plan is talking about the light levels, the quantity of light, as opposed to where the lights are going to be placed, and I think that would be the lighting plan as opposed to the photometric plan.
So we initially provided a lighting plan, and then we were asked to submit a photometric plan, and so we did both.
So, according to this document, they're saying that they're missing one of those lighting plans. So let's see if this is the updated document. Can you
It is.
help me find the photometric plan?
So just for clarification, what was the candle thing you referenced?
That's the photometrics, the amount of light.
No, but you referenced a measurement.
Yeah, so that is in the narrative. Excuse me, that's in the narrative. And also, there is included in the 418, there is a security plan here. So it starts off, it's about halfway through, just says analytic labs at the top, and then it says security plan. It says the following is an abridged version of the security plan at the request of the city council. And that does talk about the lighting, and talks about the cameras, talks about safes and vaults. So I think, I'm sorry, I went back to one of the earlier comments. So at the end, in the narrative, it talks about foot candles and the actual lighting.
Yeah, and I remember we saw that, it was in the original submission, that there was a reference there.
Yes.
I'm wondering out loud if some of the problem that the planning department is having in perhaps finding these different features is the way that it's organized and subtitled, because I think that prior submissions have been organized a little bit more along the lines of the way the ordinance is written, so it's easier to check off, okay, there's, the photometric plan, there's the external security plan, and it just follows the letter of the ordinance. And I think that in this case, the submission and the proposal jumps around a little bit, and the content is there, but it's not easily found and then checked off.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, there's a couple more. The development impact statement, part E. In addition to zoning compliance, in what ways is the proposed development at 28C Sargent Street consistent with the Holyoke Urban Renewal Plan or the master plan? It seems that the resubmission does not actually address that question, and it is part of the development impact statement request. Do you want to respond to that, or?
Sure.
It says-
The
It says acknowledged 4/23/19 for number 8. Is that what you're reading? Yeah.
I don't see that it's been,
It says, planning responds 4/23 acknowledged. What is the proposed maximum lighting?
nope, you're looking at the wrong one. So that's Development Impact Statement D is number 4. We're looking at Development Impact Statement E regarding the way that this is consistent with the urban renewal plan or the master plan.
So the existing use down there right now is as office, and the use is not changing. It's going to stay office. And we did, maybe one of the lack of communication issues is that the planning was not at our hour-plus long hearing last time, so they didn't hear what was presented in the record. And what's presented in the record is that it's office right now, and it's going to continue to be office, so there's no change in use. And so the current use being consistent with the master plan and the proposed use are the same, so they're both consistent with the master plan.
Well, it may be consistent with the present zoning. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's consistent with the master plan or the urban renewal plan, because I think the idea behind both of those is getting different types of uses in more contiguous and continuous spaces with one another.
Right. So the master plan talks about creating jobs, and this use is, this proposal is creating jobs. The master plan talks about utilizing existing structures, and this is utilizing an existing structure. The master plan talks about bringing new and innovative businesses into this district. And not only would this be the first lab in Holyoke, this would be the first lab west of Framingham, to my knowledge. So this would be, as much as it's not a change of use, as much as it's really no interior changes to the building, no exterior changes, it's a very unique and proposal that, we have a company from Amherst that wants to come into Holyoke and make use of an old mill. And I think that's what we're here tonight about, is making use of old mills. So that would be consistent with the master plan, as I understand the master plan.
So that would be another thing that I think we need to detail somewhere. So I appreciate the idea of the verbal comment being made to satisfy this committee, but I do think that it's likely that I could see us moving forward and approving this, but I think we'll want to make it conditioned on you submitting another document with these amendments.
Happy to do it.
Okay, so I'm just going to make a note of that.
I would just note procedurally, you can offer any needed information that will come as part of the special permit as a condition that those documents will be submitted, and take care of it that way.
Yes, thank you.
So moving on, again, the development impact statement, part F, applicant states that staff complement of 2 and lack public access will ensure no appreciable impacts on the area within 1/4 mile. Applicant states that staff complement of 2 and lack of public access will incur no appreciable impacts on the area within 1/4 mile. I'm not sure.
So that would be, the answer to that would be true.
Right,
I think that's a declarative statement,
right.
Yeah, so I'm just
So
going
it's,
so
Check.
move on.
okay.
Yeah.
And then part G, the applicant states that Analytics Labs LLC will contract a hazardous waste management company to handle testing materials, and the waste will be stored in drums on the site and removed by a professional waste management company monthly. What is the quantity of waste expected? What is
One
the quantity?
drum per month.
1 drum per month, and the size of that drum?
It's a 50-gallon drum.
50-gallon drum. Where will it be stored on site?
Inside the office suite, away from the entrance and away from the new chemicals. That was gone over with the fire department and approved by the fire department.
And then have you also, I know last time we were asking you to provide a copy of the contract that you have with the waste management firm.
We are putting that out to bid, but certainly a friendly condition would be that all waste be removed by a state licensed contractor.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
So then-
I would just like to note for the record that in the future, to the planning staff, if you're watching, please submit things prior to the day of the second portion of the public hearing.
And please copy the applicant.
And I'll forward this to you afterwards.
I did. I sent
you
it. I
did.
sent it
Thank
to
you.
him. And this came in at 4:49 PM, just for the record.
H, this is about the photometric plan, and it says that they acknowledge your resubmittal, proposed maximum lighting, and where is it in the above? So this is about the photometric plan. They say they acknowledge that you're talking about the minimum light levels of 1-foot candles. But they also want to know what's the proposed maximum lighting for the area? I guess some sort of cumulative lighting effect?
So it'd be one candle times the number of lights, which is probably 2 or 3. So yeah, say 3 candle lights would be the maximum.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The traffic impact statement. There's no estimate on the numbers of visitors. I know last time we were talking about getting that engineering.
No visitors.
No visitors.
So it's about the visitors. Did you get the?
Oh, the trip generation
Yes.
is it's in the revised narrative.
And under what section?
Page number.
Oh, right here, traffic impact statement.
It's on the traffic impact statement page? Okay, that's all I need to know. I just want to be able to reference it.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Again, so that's about the numbers. There are no measures proposed to mitigate traffic impacts or ensure pedestrian bicycle access.
That is true. We have 2 people coming into work who are both commuting from Amherst. So unless Jerry gets himself on a bicycle sometime really soon, we don't see a need for a bike rack.
Okay. 12 is about the locust plan, and they say that they received your response in the resubmittal and your response is accepted. 13, there's no improvement plan, building plan, or detailed plans. I understand from our conversation that there's not going to be any improvements.
Correct. No interior improvements, no exterior improvements other than lights and cameras.
And I'm just trying to find a bit more that hasn't been actually accepted and updated. So some of this is redundant regarding section 710.6.2 in the improvements plan. So more specific questions come up about like where is the waste going to be stored on site? How is the waste removal managed? I understand that you've addressed that. Where is the site lighting located? That's also been addressed. Where is the Sally Port located? I don't remember there being a Sally Port.
There is not. No, the materials, the testing materials will come in a briefcase carried by Jerry.
Okay. And then under the building plan, they want to know if the space if the space can be accessed by the adjacent office space.
No, it can't be entered from the office space, but this space has a alarmed emergency exit through the adjacent office space, according to fire department regulations.
So you have access to their space, but they don't have access to your space? Is that how I understand it?
Correct. They already have 2 exits, and for this suite to have 2 exits, they need to have an alarmed emergency exit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in the security plan?
It's in the security plan. It's also no change from
original.
when the VNA was the tenant there that had approximately 30 employees. It was the same way.
So another question related to the building plan, what are the areas of thinner wall area at the perimeter of the receiving room and the testing lab? Are these entrances from the abutting properties? If so, are they secured as to be inoperable?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And then here we go, signs.
None.
So that's going to be 20, 21.
Yep. 22, there's no changes to the sidewalks, walkways, and if there were, they would have to comply with handicap requirements anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it.
Okay, so I think, again, the way that the ordinance is organized is in a particular way so that it's really easy for the planning department and staff to be able to go through and say, are you meeting all the conditions that we've outlined in our ordinance? And it seems that the narrative that's provided here has a lot of the answers, but it's not organized in a way. And I do understand that it becomes redundant at times between like the impact and the building plan and whatnot, but I think it will need to be redrafted into a format that I think more closely mimics the ordinance so that we can have those references.
As a condition of approval, we'd be happy to submit a more organized application that follows the same flow as section 7.5.
Yep. So do you want to have a discussion? Does anyone have anything to say before we start talking about the amendments and
Well, what I'd
conditions?
like to do is see if there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak in favor of or against this special permit, so that we don't forget that part of our public hearing.
Well, hopefully the next hearing will be a customer of this independent testing lab. Right down the street, conveniently right down the street,
Madam Chair?
with delivery service.
Madam Chair? Hearing
Councilor
none,
Bartley.
Just going to make a motion to close the
Up and delivered.
public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the public hearing is closed. And to assist the committee, I did dig out a previous approval with our standard conditions. So, unless somebody else wants to start somewhere else,
I'll start it.
I was gonna read those into the record, but.
I mean, I took notes on the things that are missing, but I think now that you have the email and you're going to follow the letter of the ordinance to make things more explicit, things like being able to reference the master plan or note that'll come through that, so I don't need to detail those changes for you, right? I don't need to make that detailed list for you.
Well, Madam Chair.
So just as a procedural matter, the way that we usually handle these is under the conditions, we just put in a reference to the letter of 423 received this evening, and that you will answer the remaining open questions. Thank you.
Certainly a friendly condition, thank you.
Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, I think Ryan usually does a pretty good job of right on the agenda summarizing the conditions of the special permit. So that's for everybody can see what's going on, including the applicant and the committee and then the president. So I'm ready to make a motion now. But the only conditions I heard tonight, other than our standard ones, are all waste be removed by a licensed contractor, so I'll make that amendment. And then request any supplemental materials presented just be in written form and served and sent to us prior to our next meeting, which is, I don't know when it is, May.
First Tuesday in May.
May 7th.
Terry, was it?
For the next city council meeting?
Full city council, May 7th. Assume we go, so May 7th, so.
1 week is fine.
Okay, so anyhow, so those would be my two
Second.
amendments, and then along with the regular standard ones that we ever have, but I like to, obviously, the chair lady to read those into the record.
Okay, so the standard conditions,
Sorry.
and I hear the second.
Yep.
But if I can just add these to it.
Absolutely.
Are, one, that the owner of the building always pay commercial property tax rate to the extent allowed by federal, state, and local laws for the duration of the special permit. 2, that the business retain a minimum of 30% Holyoke residents for non-security jobs, which sort of, you got 2 here, so. That hiring preference be given to security personnel that are retired Holyoke police. Now, are you hiring separate security people, or given the security plan, you don't need that?
Correct, yeah. 2
So-
employees, security plan.
So we will leave that one off. It's not applicable in this case.
And hiring for Holyoke
And
residents wouldn't
we
be.
know that it's only a lab, so we aren't concerned about consumption deliveries. I do think, though, given that you are just a lab and you're not going to have public access, that I think it would be reasonable to put that as a condition,
Yes.
that there will be no public access.
That's fine.
And then I would, as an amendment to your condition, just offer the amendment of the 423 letter, so there's not confusion over which version, which.
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Okay, so those would be the conditions that I see.
So I'm going to make a motion to grant a special permit subject to the aforesaid conditions.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? We're all good. Thank you.
Motion to, what do we got here? Take
Item 3.
item 3 off the table and open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 3, a special permit application of Life Essence, Inc. for establishment of a marijuana manufacturing establishment at 56 Canal Street, 7 North Bridge Street, Southeast, map 041, block 01, parcel 011 and 16.09, I guess. Thank you for coming down, and if you could run through your application, we've received, I have a lot of materials here on the table, and we also did receive 2 emails, one from April 18th, DPW, and one from April 19th, which, signed by Curtis Wyman out of planning. So hopefully you have those, and we'll let you start from the top and see how far we get.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Ted Hewer. I'm an attorney at Foley Hoag in Boston. I'm here tonight representing Life Essence, doing business as True Leave, as you noted, at 56 Canal for a marijuana manufacturing establishment. So this is an MME. Thank you to the chair and also to the committee for your time this evening. I'll quickly go through the application. As you can see, we have a number of individuals, each of whom are specialists in various areas of this application that are available to answer your questions. So after I finish my hopefully brief presentation, the questions that you have, if they're not ones that I have the direct answer to, I'm happy to essentially MC and direct questions to those who are most appropriate to answer them. This is located in, obviously, an IG district as industrial general, and in industrial general, section 7.10.4 allows an MME by special permit. It's roughly 140,000 square feet. It's an old mill. I think many of you are familiar with the location. It's on Hadley Mill Road. Hadley Mill Road is potentially a road in name only. It comes off of County Road. It's essentially quickly turns into what looks like a parking lot, but it is a public way, and that has some relevance to some of the questions from planning that we hope we've answered, but are happy to go through as well. So just to emphasize, as I'm sure you're all aware, this is not a retail location. So this is an MME, so there will not be any visitors. There's not going to be public access. This is a location that will have manufacturing, cultivation, and production. There'll be minimal deliveries that would support that, but there won't be a significant amount of other traffic, and that's a question that we answered in response to planning's questions. There'll be ample parking for the employees. As we've noted, we're expecting to create about 200 to 300 jobs at this location. We believe the parking, I think planning confirms this, exceeds what's required, but they've also asked about alternative modes of transportation. Certainly, we are exploring the possibility of putting in bike racks to places to make that option feasible. And I understand we've also been speaking with the various requisite state departments about putting a bus stop in proximity to the location, so that would be an option as well. So you're not just looking at people who can drive, you can also look at people who are walking, cycling, and potentially public transport. As you know, there's a host community agreement. That's Exhibit 1 to our application. It provides the 3% of gross revenues to the city. In addition, obviously, as you noted in the condition, the standard condition that you put on to these of paying all taxes. And there's, again, prioritization of hiring of city residents for these 200 to 300 jobs. In addition, I just wanted to mention a couple of other community benefits that we want to highlight, in addition to the obvious ones of creating employment in a location where we think there's going to be a dynamic and growing industry. TrueLeave has pledged financial and other resources in terms of job fair assistance to make sure that people know about these opportunities, as well as other opportunities in the industry. As you heard from the applicant before us, the industry isn't just growing. There are also a number of other ancillary businesses that are connected to it, and all of those are ones that we think are important to have in a hub, and those are jobs I think many of the individuals, if they're not employed with us, would find an opportunity for. In addition, TrueLeave has committed to providing a free expungement service at their open office hours. As you know, in Massachusetts, many individuals who may have a criminal record for some of these offenses wouldn't be able to be employed otherwise. TrueLeave has volunteered to essentially assist those individuals at these regular open office hours we intend to hold, to see if they can expunge those offenses from their records to make it easier for them to gain employment in the very industry that we are trying to grow in Holyoke. I want to mention security briefly, because it's an important one. We have representatives here from American Alarm, as well as they've developed a comprehensive security plan along with several other professional security firms. The deliveries here, because that's going to be pretty much the only entry and exit in addition to employees. The deliveries will be a secured, restricted access drive-in. There'll be full video surveillance. That's in accordance with state law. There'll be security personnel on site during all operating hours. And of course, we'd be collaborating frequently with the city, police, fire, to make sure that their requirements are met, that they're satisfied that the operation is as secure as everyone wants it to be. I do want to mention just a little bit of background about the company. So TrueLeave is doing business as the DBA. Life Essence is the parent company. They're one of the largest cannabis companies in North America. They have 27 dispensaries in the state of Florida right now. They're growing in excess of 325,000 square feet to service those dispensaries. They have about 170 products that they put out for their various dispensaries, and they're publicly traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange. The COO, Kevin Darmody, is actually here this evening. if you have any questions about the company. But certainly they have extensive experience in running, managing, operating all the elements of a vertically integrated cannabis operation, having done it for numerous locations in the state of Florida. They're looking to bring that experience here to Holyoke, essentially as a turnkey operation. Last thing I want to mention before I introduce some of the folks that are available to answer your questions and to go through the planning board and the planning department and the DPW comments, is just to kind of give you a sense of the comprehensive outreach that we've done in preparation for coming before you tonight. Certainly, we've met with Planning and Economic Development. We've met with Marcos, with Jeff Burkott, with Curtis, to hear about their questions, to make sure that those are incorporated not only in the responses, but also in the application that you received. Spoken with Captain Moriarty of the police department. My understanding is that he submitted this afternoon the certification from the chief as to the security plan. Spoken with various city councilors, with One Holyoke CDC, and with Holyoke Community College, particularly on this notion of training and job creation. So we believe that the application that you have before you is a comprehensive one. We believe it meets the requirements of Section 7, Section 9, and Section 10. And we would ask for your favorable action. Let me just give you a brief overview of who we have available to answer your questions this evening. Rick Mason, who's the project manager, is in the back from Burnett Consulting. Kevin Darmody, as I mentioned, is the COO. Kyle Landrum is the director of cultivation. Jeff Galarno from VHB, there are civil engineers. Dino D'Angelo, mechanical engineers. David Oles, American Alarm and Security, and David Burnham, electrical engineer. Have I missed anyone? Architects. With that, I'm happy to answer questions, and like I said, if there are specific things where you'd like a deeper dive, we're happy to move those to others.
Just one quick question. Do you happen to know if the letter from the police department went to the clerk yet or not? On the security?
It has not yet. I have an email from Captain Moriarty apologizing. He was on vacation and apparently his mother passed away.
Oh, I had,
He was doing the plans, so I do have an email from him saying that it is complete. I won't tell you that it's approved. He said it's on the chief's desk. He was trying to do his best to get it over. I did check with Ryan earlier today. He did not have it as of
That
yet.
would be a condition then.
okay.
But I do have the email from him.
Has that been sent over to Ryan?
It has not. I
or
just got
to-
it 'cause I tried to get in touch with him for the meeting again, so I did not. When I do have it right here.
Oh, can you make sure that microphone is on?
Yes, I believe it is.
It is.
Oh,
It absolutely is.
I just got a
I'm not
message
this
that
loud.
it wasn't, but maybe we just are not,
No, just for,
maybe just want to make sure we're audible. Thank you.
But correct me if I'm misunderstanding you. So Captain Moriarty's email says that he received a complete security plan, but it hasn't been.
just into the mic.
The captain, and we went over the security plan with American. He came back with asking a revision for the Holyoke mandates. I sent those in. So no, we were anticipating a letter of approval. We had already interviewed.
But you don't have that letter of approval yet.
No, I have that
Right.
letter right there, just acknowledging that it's complete, ready for the for the chief's signature.
Right, so let me read into the record the letter that's dated this morning, April 23rd. This is from Captain Matt Moriarty, and he is saying to Mr. Mason, "Thank you and no worries. Letter is done and waiting for chief's signature. Have a good day." So that appears to be a process that has been completed after a revision was submitted in an earlier, noted in an earlier email, but you can put,
I would still say that it should be a condition
oh, well, sure.
that
That's
it's
no problem.
upon the chief's approval.
Absolutely, we have no
Oh,
question.
yeah. We always have to have everything, all the i's dotted and the t's crossed. Okay. Question, Counsel Bartley.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Welcome, all of you. Thank you for your investment. Obviously, we greatly appreciate it. It's quite a distinguished group we have in front of us, so I want to note that. Just, Madam Chair, before I give my questions, I just want to express my condolences to Captain Moriarty and the loss of his mother. I think that week is tomorrow. Thank you, Madam Chair. Counselor, can I just get your name again? Because you said, you know, I'm a pretty good typist, but I couldn't get it all, so.
Of course. First name is T-A-D. Last name is 5 letters H-E-U-E-R.
Thank you. And I think you said that the organization has 325,000 square feet of space currently in operation. Did I hear you say that?
625,000.
625,000 currently.
Correct, in the state of Florida.
No, roger that. And then this property is 140,000 square feet?
I believe that's roughly right in terms of floor plate.
Okay, so that's a significant fraction, and that'll significantly increase your client's space. And in terms of that space, where is your client with the purchase of the property or the lease of the property?
My understanding is that there's a purchase and sale agreement with the current owner, and that provided that all the permits that are necessary to be received are received, that purchase and sale agreement will execute along with certain other provisions, as we've discussed, and as you see in the planning department's letter. There are some minor issues about easements and cross grants and things like that. Those will all get resolved at the time of a closing.
Okay, and when did you know, assuming this takes its regular course, and then when did your client anticipate closing on this?
So I think that essentially construction would begin approximately 3 months after, if you know, the phasing is permitted. There's still building permit and architectural approval that's required from the state, from the CCC. My understanding, and I can be corrected by Rick if I'm wrong, is that we would hope to close once we have all the requisite permits, and then we can go and get, then we'd be able to essentially start the work because we know that we have all the approvals we need in order to operate once we have completed the build-out.
Right. Did you give an estimated time when you think that'll close?
Trulieve has agreed.
Back to the microphone.
I'm sorry. Trulieve has agreed to go ahead and release the hard deposit pending this meeting, and then if it were to go to final council either on or full council on the 7th, and then there's the 20-day or 21-day appeals period. So it would either be, we would look to release the deposit to go to close starting on May the 7th, working through the end of the month.
Thank you.
And I believe that the P&S is part of that submittal package if you wanted to review it.
Oh, it is. Oh, great.
Thank you.
What's then if that's the case, what's the sale price?
It is, so this is page 2 of Exhibit 2 to the application, Section 1.2, purchase price of $3,200,000.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a quick point on that. I think the building might be assessed pretty well south of that number right now. Probably way south of that number, be my guess. Again, I'm just going to, and this is just a little bit of rhetoric. I'll get back to my questions in a second. A little bit of rhetoric, but I just want to, again, congratulate this body for its decision we made 2 years ago to put this industry in this zone. But for that decision that we made, these buildings don't get sold for $3.2, never mind $3.2 million. That was a decision made by the city council with a lot of kickback. Was not a unanimous vote by any stretch, but this body made that call for that reason. And again, I just want to congratulate those city councilors and, well, all of us really for making that tough vote, and that's why we did it. Because if we're going to get investment into the lower wards, as we refer to them, lower is just a euphemism, not a derogatory statement, just that's all it is. Lower, it's a number, but it's geography too. We're not going to get any kind of investment, so that's just a little bit of a... Councilor, you mentioned operating hours, but you didn't specify operating hours. What does your client propose?
So this being an MME, this is not retail. Hours are 24/7. We will have armed guards based on the Holyoke mandate, 24 hours a day. So now it goes to a minimal staff, of course, but the plant is open 24/7. And Kyle, did you want to address anything with that from a growth standpoint?
No, I think we.
So Kyle Landrum, I'm the Director of Cultivation for the state of Florida. That is correct, Rick. So we do operate 3 shifts a day currently now. The workload essentially decreases for shift 2 and 3, but it is still there. So we are actively cleaning, restocking, resetting for the room, and then manufacturing. They operate 3 full shifts a day as well too. So, yeah. Any
that's-
questions?
Oh, we'll have questions, yeah.
Okay.
We will.
And I just want to add that that's kind of where we come up with the 200 to 300 staff that would be there, is running those shifts, in case you were wondering.
I am wondering, so initial startup would, because when are we going to get to, is it Rick? No.
It's Rick, yes.
It is Rick, okay.
It's Rick.
Rick, okay. May I call you Rick?
Sir, you can call me anything you want as long as you okay this permit.
I like to hear it.
But I will say this.
Those are usually conversations we have off of City Hall property. Those aren't
I had lunch with Mike
conversations
Sullivan
we have-
actually when I first got in town.
We have in a public building, sir, so,
PG.
right. So let's just get back to reality here. So, 200 to 300, okay, that's a big headline right there. At what point do we phase in the 200 to 300? Or what phases do we
The whole
ramp up?
project will be a phased project. And of course, this is going to be contingent upon Damian Coate and the building department okaying a phasing project because, as we all know, there's a lot of intricacy into doing it logistically to be able to secure a floor and maintain all of the ordinances that have been laid down both at the state level and the local level. So I could put together somewhat of a Microsoft project schedule for you, but we were looking to be doing a floor at a time. We would hope that in the next 3 to 4 months, we would be producing cannabis on that 3rd floor. As we move on the 1st floor, and we'll go over this, is where we also have manufacturing and the kitchen. Now, that's a much higher density of staff that would be in that kitchen area and in the manufacturing and production area.
So at 3 months, when you're producing product, is it impossible to quantify, or based upon your experience, what do you, in 3 months, how many, just estimate the number of employees you'll have, and then at a year, why don't you give me an estimate of where you think you'll be? And by the way, how many floors are there?
There's 4 floors in there.
Okay, and you're going to develop all 4 floors?
All 4 floors. It's roughly 140,000 square feet.
Okay. And
We will
so-
hit about approximately 72,000 square feet of canopy.
Okay, so in 3 months, we think we'll have how many, the number of employees? Rick?
I would say that we would have between 50 to 70. And I think that as we
great.
progress with floors, and especially, I don't want to give you false numbers, but as soon as we get to, and I'm not sure, because our agreement with Conklin, with Fran Arnold, the owner, Charlie Chips, he has 4 months to vacate the building after close. I've developed a great relationship with Fran. He has already freed up some space so we could do a little bit of testing. And while we're on that subject, I've been in Holyoke now, living basically in Holyoke since January. I live in West Brookfield. I was born there, but I come here every weekend. I ride my bike, and I truly have thoroughly enjoyed being in the flats. I've really never had a Puerto Rican hot dog before until the other day. An experience at dining over at Fernandez Family Restaurant. So I've really enjoyed the community, just to add that. When we hit the kitchen area and manufacturing, the number will be much greater because there's definitely a higher concentration of staff that are in the kitchen and the manufacturing area. Isn't that correct? Yeah. You want to go ahead?
And a little bit of way, an easier way to maybe think about it is it's also driven by the product demand on the customer or the patient base too. So if it's the demand is more on edibles, the staff in the kitchen would increase, extraction, vice versa, or whole flower product too. So it also plays into the amount of people you need at which time and period. Yeah.
Okay, Madam Chair, may I just continue? Just for, thank you.
Yes, Councilor
Okay,
Bartley.
all right. Okay, I'm just going to make a quick point about the assessment. So that's going, the assessment is like I said, well south of 3.2 million. It's not even close. But that assessment's going to be altered at some point based upon, because usually comp sales, that's, you all know how that works. Okay, and then just the market for this, your market is where? New England, Massachusetts, Holyoke? Where is it?
You're saying currently, right now, our
Well,
Trulies market, or
so
the potential?
for this, for the
For this, it would be inside the Massachusetts area.
Okay, and your market is to whom? To retailers?
We actually, I think it would be considered both too. I think we would actually consider wholesaling the product as well as stocking our own retail dispensaries or units.
Okay, but you're not. Are you planning to retail out of this site at all? No.
Not out of this site,
Okay.
no, sir.
Okay, so you would think about retailing it at another site, whatever that might be.
That's correct.
And what about?
I can address that,
Yeah.
because we're currently in that process right now.
Correct. So I'd also add, it's not just retail, but they also have, as you see on the bottom of page 2 of the cover letter to the application. TrueLeaf has a provisional certificate of registration. That's a PCR from the Department of Public Health. So they are looking to also be able to operate medical growing as well. So it will be an opportunity to do not just retail growing, but medical growing. But there's going to be no consumption on site. There'll be no visitors on site. There'll be no public visitors to the location.
Okay, and then just I'm not sure if we've addressed this here in this city when we have a publicly traded company. And I think that's what you said that they are.
Correct.
Publicly traded company. And that publicly traded company owns the properties in Florida?
Correct.
Oh, all right. And so this would just, this would be part of, the Holyoke site, if approved, would be just part of its portfolio? I mean, is that just how that, I mean?
That's to my understanding. I think to the extent the question goes to, like, who is the owner, because that was one of the questions that the planning department raised. I think you'll see Exhibit 3 to the application, which I would note we have requested confidentiality for pursuant to General Law 6610. It's a Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 26 exemption. But there we have provided, for the benefit of the municipality, the designated owners and those who own more than 10% of the company.
So what you just referenced is an exception to the public records law?
Correct. That's
okay.
correct. Yes.
Okay. And that's noted in your.
Yes.
That's the. Okay. Why would that be exemption to the public? What does that exemption say?
There are numerous exemptions. I think the exemption here is a trade secret type exemption. It's probably exemption G of Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 26, G. So there are a lot of individual.
Right, but we're just talking about owners. So why would that? That's not. You're not saying they're. How can owners in a publicly traded company be?
Oh, if your question is, are they listed and you can figure out who they are? Yes, they are. The question is, because you're publicly traded, you could have hundreds and hundreds of individual owners. It would be impossible for us to list every one of those owners in an application. Usually it's just one person.
So you're just listing the primary?
We're listing, we had a discussion to list those who have more than a 10% share.
More than 10% share. Okay, now is that exempt?
I believe we've requested exemption for it.
You've requested exemption for it. Okay. Okay. All right. That's just a touch confusing, but I understand it now. Okay. Madam Chair, I'm good for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Anderson Burgos?
No, I didn't have any.
Oh, you're all set?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought you were in the queue. Counselor Lisi?
I just have one really quick question. So as far as I understand, Florida legalized medical marijuana this year, and you already have a 625 square foot operation up and running. Is that how I understand it?
Like Kevin.
Sorry, thank you. No, it was actually legalized in, oh, Kevin Darmody, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of True
Thank
Leave.
you.
Sorry about that. They actually allowed medical marijuana, and remember, this is totally a medical environment in Florida, strictly integrated. In 2016, we had the first sale in Tallahassee, in the Tallahassee dispensary. We had to go through many machines and stuff just to get that done. But yeah, so what else?
That was it. It just seemed, I was under the impression that the medical was legalized only in this past year, so I thought it was a large operation.
What you might be thinking of is that just recently they allowed smokable flower. This was just literally a month ago, where it actually somebody actually sued the government to allow smokable flower for medicinal purposes. They actually won the case back in September, I believe it was. That administration immediately appealed the verdict. The new governor was elected. He basically said, I don't want to just drop the appeal. I want the legislature to come up with a law. I don't want the judiciary deciding what the law should be. So then in Florida, the legislature only meets for 2 months a year. So in the beginning of March, they actually came out with the law that allowed for smokable flowers. So that started literally about a month ago. So that might have been what you might have been thinking.
Yeah, thank you. And then just going back to the project submission, the planning board, so I'm probably going to go back to Mr. Ewer. So the planning board notes that you need to have a conversation with the fire department about fire access, and that you were going to be coming forward with some details about that in the public testimony.
Right.
Yes. I actually have a document for you from Mr. Ortiz, Lieutenant Ortiz. I went down and visited with him again today.
Okay.
Just to cover it all, we actually met, I think it was back in March. So his signature, I'm sorry. His signature is right there, and then on the drawing I attached to it, his signature is on there as well.
Is, is that a copy we can keep?
Absolutely, ma'am.
Thank
yes.
you.
So we had met with all the department heads back in March to identify, the first things, the obvious things up front. And we addressed quite a few things with the lieutenant. And then today I had the opportunity to sit down with him at the fire department. We went through, and he approved the plan as it sits right now. He has no problems.
So you're currently able to figure out how you're going to get fire access to the site.
Yes, ma'am. If I could show you on a drawing, if you care to see.
Yes, I think that would be very helpful to do a review of the site. Yeah.
Wow, mind the way.
No.
Oh, no, I'm just going to move it over there.
Okay.
No, we're fine.
I wasn't sure if we'd have a lot of people from the public.
Just scoot right here.
You got it. Oh, that's too hard.
Can you just bring it over here?
There you go.
I think I handled that very well. What do you think?
Make sure you have a microphone.
Just grab one right there. You just
So what we opted to do here, after the meeting that we had with the department heads, was not to fence the entire site in. What we opted to do was to go ahead and use sally ports that are here. The reason for that, there is an array of fire hydrants on this site. And had we fenced it in, it would have impaired the fire department's ability to access those hydrants. So what you're seeing here, and you have copies of this in the submittal. You have everything that I have here. What we opted to do was, there is 2 sally ports at this end for deliveries. It's toward the grow end. We also have one at the other end where manufacturing and the kitchen is. So it's isolated away from the grow. Again, There is no, I repeat, no public access. This is strictly an MME facility. So anyway, what we decided to do was just to go ahead and fence this end in and leave the rest of it so the fire department could have access. So when I met with the lieutenant, that was great. And then he okayed the, I don't know if you found it or not, the page he signed, but he signed off on it and wrote okay.
So while you're giving the performance, and to the point that Councilor Bacon said, it talks about giving a detailed description of all the activities that are going to be taking place on the site. So it might be a good opportunity to kind of like run through the big picture of the plan, the project, what things are going to look like on the inside.
Well, I apologize for walking away from you to begin with. And I must admit that we actually put together, I think, which was an incredible submittal that we turned in. However, the attorney and myself, we forgot to implement the pages that show the activities. So I have a couple.
You could leave them and I'll get them out.
Well,
Thank you.
2 pages.
I
So
see.
you have the cultivation page, right?
Operations.
And operations.
Okay.
And then if I could, I'd like to bring Kyle up to go ahead and maybe talk to you a little bit about the day-to-day operations. This is kind of what he's in charge of down in Florida and can lean the most credibility.
So this is what we have.
All right, perfect. What we can do is start in the cultivation section that you can follow along with. First would be the mother plant room. So essentially this houses our genetic database, and it's where we go and take our clone cuttings, or essentially our genetic copies for the flowering plants. So from there, it now transitions into the clones. So essentially a cutting is taken from the mother, processed and rooted in a small media, or a grow media. And essentially what we're trying to do there is spark root growth. From there, it moves on to the vegetative phase. At that point in time, what we're trying to do is just get the plants to essentially grow from a small cutting that's taken roots now up into a larger plant that essentially is destined for a flower production room, which is, it spends, I guess, approximately 30 days in the vegetative phase whenever we've sparked that vigorous root growth. And then it's moved on to what's called a flower production room. From here is where we trigger the plant to change the light cycle, which sparks the hormones in the plant to actually start making the flowers, which produces the end material, or the product that we're essentially after. So we change the light cycles from the 18 hours in the vegetative phase to 12, and in that phase it essentially spends about 9 to 10 weeks, depending on the particular strain of the plant. So once that's achieved, the plant is now ripe. We essentially harvest it. It goes to a dry room, spends about 7 days there, processed, hung upside down, and at that phase, we're just essentially trying to pull the moisture down from 75 to 80% when it's living on the actual stem to down around 11 to 14%. Yeah. And then we'll essentially jump sheets now over to the production side. So that's the cultivation part, and then the actual processing, production, manufacturing. So there's a few different ways that we can extract essentially the active ingredient off the plant, and it really depends on which product line that it's going to go into final use. The first one being a CO2 extraction. From there, it takes actually the strain-specific material, the terpenes, the fats, the lipids, the waxes from the organic matter, captures it, and then allows us to essentially use it in the final or end product depending on which product line it goes into. Probably our most common and safe method, obviously, is ethanol extraction. So we use 200 proof ethanol to essentially use as a solvent to take down the it's called trichomes, or actually the active ingredient, off of the organic material. From there, it essentially gets captured into a rotodistiller and a rotovape. then put in a tray, and then it goes into a vacuum oven. So it pulls negative pressure inside the vacuum oven, and then essentially just kind of purges any existing ethanol or solvent from the product. Moving on to that, we move on to the distillation room. So essentially, depending again on what product it goes into, it can go kind of three different ways. Each phase is just a little bit more refinement or removal of certain things out of the cannabis oil. From there, it's essentially it goes into a batching scenario. So that way we can test it. We know exactly at what percentage the oil is, control a steady, consistent product each time. As it is organic plant or material, it can vary in potency and in products. So batching allows us to essentially create a baseline, have a specific recipe, and create a consistent product. And then from there, it can go into, Rick mentioned, or actually Tad mentioned, we've got 170 different SKUs right now, or product lines. So it would be differentiated, put in different product lines at that point in time, different delivery methods, whether it be a vape cart, edible, whole flower, etc. And then the final function would be the kitchen. The edibles, I think Rick spoke about that a little bit. But that's where it would be made into, interjected into other things, chocolates, cookies, brownies, etc. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And then, so can you map out what's happening here onto a visual of where things are happening in the building? So I think that it would be looking at like the basement plan, the floor plan for the first floor. And then I think we want to hear, if it's okay with the rest of the committee, I'd be interested in hearing how you're going to do or how you're anticipating the phase build out to happen, if you need certain rooms available at certain times.
That's perfect. Yep, and Rick's actually going to be able to narrate that one better than myself. Certainly aid and assist you.
First thing I'd like to do is, I gave you the wrong document. Here is the one that's stamped by the lieutenant, right here, and has his approval. Could I have the other one back, though? Because that goes to some other stuff. Perfect, thank you.
Are you guys able to see it?
No, it's okay.
So like I mentioned, we had met with the department heads back in March. So there's some other people here. We have, the architect is here, Michael Kahn, with Kahn Architects, as well as, he already introduced Jeff Galarno. Dino D'Angelo is the HVAC, as well as the plumbing engineer. And then we have Dave Burnham with Universal. We've got Dave and his partner over here with American Alarm. And then we've got, I don't know if any of you know Jan with Bay State Fire. He's here as well, and then myself. Now, in the submittal that you have, you've got every floor shown here. So what we have up here is that one, and then you'll have the remaining floors. And the reason that's crucial, here, this would be the fourth floor. What does that say? Third floor, second, and so on. So just to let you know, so in the basement area, we plan on using that isolated area. Half of the floor down there is concrete, to go ahead and have our containers and drums down there that have the fertilizer, and to go ahead and be able to water the plants and get the nutrients to them. That will be on a pumping system that's currently being designed by Dino D'Angelo. They recycle in Florida 98% of their water. That includes any evaporation that's coming off the HVAC units. And what we have done is, I'd have to give you their name. They're a state licensed company that takes care of any of the disposal of the remnants of the plants. They also take care of the roughly 50 gallons to 100 gallons per month of that 2% of brine that's left over that has to be taken by a Massachusetts certified contractor.
And did you mention the name of the company?
I have it right here, ma'am. I've got everything. I've got the Mass DEP contact people. I've kind of been in contact with all of them. It's Harvey.
So that's who you will be using?
I can't, no,
Or
we're
you're
putting it
going
out to bid, but they have been doing consulting with me based on Massachusetts regulations, so that
So you'll
we're,
be putting it out to bid?
Right.
But you'll be using a license?
the benefit to a publicly owned company is that you want zero chance of liability. So naturally, we go above and beyond what has to be done. So, we've researched it, and the consultants that, we pay for the information that we need, and then we will put it out responsibly, hopefully first to a Holyoke contractor, and then bring it out incrementally from there.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So on the first floor, I'll tell you what, why don't you go ahead and run them through? So we got flower down here and this, and then, but the third floor, hold on one.
And are you going to be using the entire first floor in like the first, I guess, phase of production? Okay.
Third floor.
Third floor.
So if you go to 3. So what you'll find, we don't have it.
That microphone does come out
You could grab
of
that other one.
stand if it's less awkward.
Is it?
Can I take some of this middle?
Is it? Oh, that one.
That one, yeah, just because it's kind of awkward.
Yeah, to hold it down. You got it?
Just if it's a little less awkward. If there's enough wire.
So we're going to start out on the third floor. That will be our first phase, and the reason for that, Kyle will explain.
Grab the microphone over here, it might be easier for you.
Doubles as the stand.
It'll be much easier.
Perfect. All right. So, kind of as we were walking through the different areas or the functions of the building and cultivation, the reason why we would want to start on the third floor is essentially a build out where our mothers are going to be, where we can take our clone or our genetic copies from. So it's essentially the start of the life cycle. So we're going to start there, and essentially as the train picks up speed and goes down track, that's when we'll start building the additional layers and levels. So we're going to start on number 3. Go to number 2, and then number 4, and then number 1, where number 1 is processing, extraction, and manufacturing.
So you have the most people traveling and working on the first floor as opposed to up and down to the third floor? Is that why
That
you're
will be
choosing
correct.
to orient things from a top-down
Well,
perspective?
I think it was actually more of a product flow. So as the things, everything starts on the top and then it comes down, opposed to starting in the middle, going up, and then coming back down. So it's essentially as it's working its way down through the building, it will be shipped out. Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So just a little bit easier to move material. As the plant gets older, it typically gets heavier, and it's easier to do down than up.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And we wanted to minimize traffic too, going down through the manufacturing and kitchen area by isolating it to give the best product possible.
So all flowers on the third floor?
So we've got, it's going to be on the second floor, but we're going to start on the third. So we're going to have our mother rooms. If you're looking at the plan, it would be to your right. And then our vegetative phase moves from right to left. And then there is going to be some flower on the third floor. And then all of number 2 is going to be all flower.
Mm-hmm. Mother is different than flower. The
That's
mother is
correct.
the
Yes, ma'am.
plant, the full plant, as opposed to
That's
flower being
correct.
the-
So yes, the kind of the way to explain it, the mothers stay in a continual vegetative phase, so they're doing nothing but growing, and so they stay under at least 18 to 20 hours of light a day. So they never actually trigger the flower or the hormones in the plant to make the flower. So we're just essentially taking copies. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Second phase is the second floor, and that's where it's all flowers.
I don't want to lead anyone astray here. We are going for the third floor as the first phase. And again, this will depend on the building department. So I do not want to make decisions based on what they might agree to or not agree to. But optimally, yes, we would go to 3, then we would go to 2, then we would go to 1. The reason for that strategy is that Mr. Arnold Conklin has got 4 months to move out. The last thing they're going to move is going to be their showroom. And if you've been there, you know it's right there on the first floor at the far end. That is exactly where we're putting the kitchen and the manufacturing. Now, they have worked with us, and they're trying to give us space, and we're willing to supplement labor to help kick Fran out, because as you know, he's got another building over on Appleton that he's going to be moving into. So that right now is it, but I hate saying in concrete because it depends on a lot of factors, you know, especially the building department here on what we can do for phasing. I do not want to answer for them.
So let's just work under the assumption that you're going to get approval for a phase build out.
Yes, ma'am?
And then after you walk us through the best possible scenario, I think we should also hear a bit about if your, phase build out is not approved, what then does the project look like? And I hope I'm not monopolizing the time here amongst my other committee members. Okay.
So the reason, and to kind of go back on something that Kyle touched on earlier, is the fact that we will be selling and wholesaling, because we would love to go ahead and get started with the manufacturing and the edibles. But right now, Tad and his team in Boston are working feverishly at getting us into a dispensary. So naturally, our first priority in business is going to be growing some flower. That's what we're doing. The third floor is the most optimal. This is a building that needs a lot of help. You know, you've got cracked floors. We're trying to create a semi-sterile environment here. You got walls that are a foot thick, which present a lot of challenges from a mechanical standpoint, from a heating standpoint. So there's a lot to do. We have figured out that in 30 days, we can take care of the floor. An entire floor ranges, the square footage is down here, it's about 28,000 square feet roughly per floor. It decreases as you go up. And then, so right now we have people coming in town tomorrow, part of the leadership group to kind of work on what we're doing with the HVAC. But the most optimum thing, I go to the building department with some plans in the next 30 days. They approve us to go forward with phasing. We go ahead and release the hard deposit to Conklin, and then Fran will allow us, as he starts moving stuff out, to start working in here. Then we're going to get to a point, we're going to need permission from the CCC. Again, these are things that Tad and his firm are working towards. But optimal, yeah, we'd go to the third floor, we'd build it out. We'd bring in the flowers. They would go from then into the clone room. Then they go into veggie. Then they go to flower, and then they're distributed to other floors. As we get the timing down on how long this takes, and this is something Kyle could answer from the growth of the plant, we would then go to the second floor because it's basically a flower floor. Everything here is flower on this floor. Now, if we can, in phasing, run things concurrently, I might be working on 2 and 4, but 3 primarily, and I think I can have this completed in a year. So from the time that we hand Fran a hard deposit, we release that out of escrow, I would say that in the next 12 months I can have this facility totally functioning 100%.
Okay. And then on the first floor, there's production. And are there different rooms for different types of products?
Yeah, and I'll let Kyle speak to that.
Yeah, so there's definitely different extraction methods that we talked about too, using CO2, using ethanol, but each area is essentially designed or built function for the purpose in that particular phase of the plant. So the manufacturing area is going to be more consistent with putting things together, concentrated in small groups, working at tables. Whereas the extraction area, where it's going to be probably substantially more equipment, just different pieces and functions needed at that phase in its life. Yeah. So. Does that answer your question?
Bigger map. Thank you. Yeah, and then I think so. All the shipping is happening off of the first floor.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah.
And it seems like you have 3 Sally ports that are pretty large.
Yeah.
There's 4.
Yes, ma'am.
And then
There's the 4th one. Actually, is this a double? Okay. So 5 then.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And are they going to be differentiated? Like one Sally Port is for one type of product and another Sally Port is going to be for a different type of product, or is it going to be destination-based?
Well, we kind of laid this out logistically so that the far ones at this end right here, this is the main part of the grow going up. So from the first floor to the second, third, and fourth, that's the greatest part of our flower rooms. Over here, we kind of isolated manufacturing for a security standpoint, as well as so that we have people that are working here or staying here. We don't have people wandering all over, then walking in here with different strains or anything on their clothes, even though it is a semi-sterile environment. So the one down here is for shipping for the manufacturing. This one here is actually for the dumpster, the lockable dumpster. And this is secured and protected by security. And again, we went through this with Harvey to determine kind of the size, because we're also going to have the regular waste, the non-cannabis waste going in here as well. So there's going to be no waste. We're not going to have people going through looking for gloves or looking for anything in our dumpsters. And then the one down here, this is kind of misleading. It's really one divided as two, because part of this is a ramp on the one, if you can
I see
barely
it,
tell.
Okay. I think I'm all set then.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to get in the queue when you have a chance.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Counselor Murphy?
Yeah, just a few things. First of all, I tried to find the location, because I went to Canal and Bridge today, and I walked around, and I said, I do not see where 56 Canal and a 7 North Bridge connect, so I was at the intersection of Canal and North Bridge, so I'd like to, can you
So
bring that,
you know-
over here? Because I,
You know the history, so let me just tell you really quick about
Okay.
this. It's 56 Canal because of one reason. Because this bridge goes over to a parcel here that's 28 feet wide by 80 feet wide. Now, that's all going to change, and we're working with the city engineer and planning and Marcos to get this parcel addressed correctly. Because to me, it's dangerous for a police department to respond to 56 Canal. So anyway, that's the reason, is that at one time, this was all part of the same development. So this is Hadley Printing over here.
Okay.
And then this building attached here, and then went up, there was a conveyor there. So it was all one property. If you want, I can drive you by there when we're done.
well, by the time we get done,
And do you
Oh,
think
don't say that.
you'll be long gone.
You would know it is the Conklin office building. That's what.
Yeah,
that's
Conklin
the building
Furniture.
that, Terry, that we were talking about, that
Okay.
somebody had mentioned.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And there's a
Conklin
street
office.
front view over there, Terry.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a few other questions about your operation then. So just in terms of, because I know the people that we just had here are doing testing, and if I recall correctly, so when you're cultivating, when you're through cultivating, before you're producing, do you have to have that cultivation out there and get tested?
So it depends on which phase, but yes, sir, you're correct. Yeah, it has to be tested before each batch is essentially released for production, and then essentially subsequently to the public or the retail outlets. Or
Okay, and
wholesale.
then the same thing with your production, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're not retailing here, you're wholesale, you're hoping to wholesale?
That's correct. There's no retail
At
being
this
sold at this location. That's correct.
Okay, and am I correct, if you're talking 300 employees based on, is it approximately 150 people in a day shift, and then it goes down less and less, or
Well,
is it the same for all shifts?
Yeah, so it will be 7 days a week. Well, we envision it to be 7 days a week manufacturing too. So whereas 300 people might not be there all in the course of one day, we have to cover days off, vacations, stuff of that nature too. So I think as we build and phase the building up, that would be a fair assessment to say at least 150 to possibly more. Could be spread over 3 shifts. 150 to 200.
Okay. And parking-wise, how much parking do you have there?
We have 70, I'll tell you, can I bring VHB? You've heard from them numerous times, and Jeff Galarno is here. And I've already taken all his stuff down, but
Yeah, if you want to clip it back together.
That would be great, because we have a
Yeah.
letter from DPW also.
Yeah.
So that's a good one for our engineer guests.
Thanks, guys. I'll flip to it, yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Rick. Good evening. Again, my name is Jeff Galarno, project engineer with VHB. I don't know how much more I can add to this. These guys did a great presentation so far. So I can flip right to, he's already had it up there before, but it's basically our, this is a demolition plan, not much going on here. But it's basically our layout materials plan. So you could, just to get your bearings, this corner here is North Bridge Street, and then the canal would be along the bottom. So the building, it's scaled back as a existing addition is right here. And I want to point out 3 areas on the site, which Rick had mentioned for parking. This hatched area here, in the back, and across Hadley Mills Road. I'm sorry?
Gray spot.
The gray spots, correct.
And you said 70?
70, there's a chart on here. It's 78 parking spaces, so we're required to have 75, so we're above the zoning requirement. And that's based on manufacturing. So we have the entrance off of North Bridge Street here, and what we've done is there is existing ADA spaces on either side. There's an existing crosswalk, but it's the paint is worn down. You can see it at the very edges. So we're basically repaint the crosswalk, add a stop bar with a stop sign, and then delineate the 2 lanes here out and in with a double yellow center line. As you pull into Hadley Mills Road, the main entrance will be right in this area. And we have 9 parking spaces with a couple accessible spaces up in front as well. And if you look up into this inset, it's an entrance ramp detail. So that is our ADA accessibility to the front door. The parking in the rear, we also have there's an existing ramp, ADA ramp there, so we're providing an ADA space. But we have spaces along the building here, and then this line here that I'm delineating with this hatched area is the property line. So we're staying within the property limits here for parking. Rick already had mentioned the 5 Sally ports, 1 here, 2 here, and 2 here. What we've done is another inset up here. You'll see an arborvitae row, so it's basically screening these fenced-in areas from North Bridge Street. We have an existing garage here. This is the other hatched area that will be removed. What we're going to do is provide a 25-foot wide easement for Holyoke Gas and Electric so that they can access their easement at the rear of the building. And that will actually have a fence here with a double swing gate. There is also some details I can point out. I think Rick got to, this is a grading plan, not much to talk about here, but these 2 details here will show the fire truck route. It's a 40-foot length truck. He'll come in off of North Bridge. He'll go around the Sally Port, access the rear, and he'll have plenty of room to back out this way. No, I'm sorry. He's just going to back out to back up. Back up, right? That's a difficult, yeah. He'll be a very good driver if he can do that. But so he backs out in this area, turns around, and then pulls forward to exit the site. The lower one here is basically a delivery truck doing the same route. But when he gets to this back point here, he'll be able to back up into the Sally Port. And again, I don't know if Rick touched on this, but this Sally Port will have an overhead door so that the door will open, the truck will come in, it'll sit in there. This door will not open until this door is closed. And that way, for security purposes, we have a gentleman here who can go into further detail with that. You can flip to... These are just some standard details that we have on all of our plans. You guys have seen these before. I do want to get to one extra plan here. This would be survey. So this plan here is our lighting plan, or our photometrics plan, which will show the foot candle spread throughout the property. You can see the dark dot here is the actual light pole, and this polyline here would be the area where the light would spread down, correct? So you can see we're basically focusing all of the light within the property limits. And then over here as well, you can see
it's basically the light is shielded and focused down towards the parking area. So I can flip. I think that's it. Okay, then I'm into some of the architectural drawings. So I can. That's basically it. If you have some of the questions from DPW.
I'm good with that, but just, I want to go back to just the job aspect of this. So I'm assuming, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that there are certain jobs that are better paying than other jobs. And you're talking about Hoya Community College. I believe one of you mentioned that you're working with Hoya Community College to develop some kind of educational component.
Absolutely. I met with Holyoke Community College. They came out to my office one day and we talked about the fact that they were looking to have assistant cultivators, assistant head growers. They're trying to go ahead and use this new cannabis industry to help bring the wages up in this town. What he was looking for from me is to go ahead and speak with True Leaf about an opportunity for them maybe to aid in the curriculum and to kind of help with bringing people in to kind of get some feedback on what they're teaching and how it's working. And True Leaf with open arms wants to be involved with that. I'd also met with Mike Moriarty with the CDC too about other ways that True Leaf could contribute to the community.
Okay. And specifically in terms of cultivation to production, are there specific skills that you're looking for in terms of hiring?
100%, yeah. And I think it actually kind of goes in different phases as well, because you have the plant switch is highly heavy on biology, and then you have the extraction process, which is heavy on chemistry, and then shipping logistics, and then it goes, essentially you need different skill sets for each different phase of the plant too. I can kind of speak to currently what we have now in our facilities in Florida. They've ranged from an entry-level position all the way up to $100,000 a year jobs, which take, essentially sometimes require an immense amount of experience or education. I think in Florida right now we're kind of, since it's a new industry, we're very much in that teaching, learning atmosphere. We don't have a lot of people that have experience, so we built the modules, build the standard operating procedures, bring them in, and then do our best to promote within as the skill sets are kind of acquired that we teach.
So from the product standpoint, cultivation and product, it appears a lot of science background is beneficial.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
I'd say in all phases.
Awesome.
So let me ask you all a question, if you'd like, why Mr. Galarno's up here. The notes that I have, both from the city engineer and from Curtis, are numbers 9 and 10 from planning, and number 4 from the city engineer. Because Jeff can go ahead and address those while he's up here and has the plan out.
Well, I may not be making the exact same reference, but I'm looking at a letter dated April 18th from Bob Perrin, our engineer.
Yes, ma'am.
And so my question was, under number 1, where they're talking about a discontinuance for the right-of-way, do you see that you will need that to happen or not?
Yes, and this is where you get the full benefit of the land use and real estate attorney.
We have met with, this is a long ongoing thing between the city solicitor, our attorneys, HD&E, and Bob Perry has some knowledge of it. But what we've got from the city plan is an area, if this is what we're talking about, this area right here that was kind of created as almost like a dwarf island.
You need the microphone in your hand.
Oh, sorry. I'll use this. I feel like Monty Hall with this one. Is it? So what happened was back in, and don't quote me on the years, if it was 88 or 89, but when the city plan was put into effect up to this point, it created, with this public way, this one dwarf property right here. Now, if you notice, it cuts through a standing garage that's currently there. It's this garage right here. On the very end, yes, sir, on that far, far end,
If you want to come in, it would be great.
Yeah,
You don't
please.
have to. but
Come
you
save
can,
me.
Whatever you prefer.
But as part of this, what we've done is we're working with HD&E, and we are granting them a 20-foot easement. We're going to tear down this garage. The surveyor came out the day before yesterday, and we met with John Zawerko with HD&E. So they were going ahead and implementing a 20-foot easement, because right now, HD&E, you know what they do? They drive through this garage. They come through the front, then they open the door, and they come out the back. So that's what I can tell you. I'm sure that Mr. Parent can.
And thank you for being here.
So the legal reason here, Hadley Mills Road, like I said, if you drove on it, you would not think you were on a road at all. Looks like a driveway, but it's a road. And roads, if you don't want to use a road, need to be discontinued, right? You can't just abandon it. You need to discontinue the use. Here, this portion of the parcel was kind of a trapezoid shape. If you were to pull in, you would, that's behind a wall at the moment, right? It doesn't look like a road. It certainly doesn't look like a road. It's actually still part of Hadley Mills Road layout, which means that it still has a right to pass and repass for the city on it, right? There's also an easement over it for HG&E. So because it's not actually a road right now and it's an easement over it, right? The city doesn't own the fee interest in the parcel. The city just has an easement to pass and repass over it. So the city obviously knows that there's no road there physically. You can't drive on it. They're willing to discontinue. The city engineer said that they're willing to discontinue, and that would go to city council in a separate petition to discontinue this portion, this trapezoid, as a city right-of-way.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is because we have it referenced in the letter, but also I'm trying to figure out as we're working through the special permit, you know, how we would best address it, you know, as a condition or acknowledging that, you know, it's something that needs to happen.
Correct.
So that we're all in line. Counselor Bartley?
Can I just address that?
Sure.
So I'll make a motion, I'll make it now, that we make a part of this special permit, we condition it, that the city engineer's letter dated April 19th as written and/or as amended in the future would be a part of this special permit. Because everything on here, I mean, I can't imagine you're arguing with any of the aspects of the letter, are you, Counselor? The one
It's dated the 18th.
April
but
18th, I
just
think is
to
what I
be-
said.
Just to be specific. Right, and so I was just going to go down each
So
of
I think the city engineer
items.
makes six different points on here, and
Right.
you know we could walk through all of them, Madam Chair, but I don't know if that's the best use of our time. But
Okay.
I think, and I'm just one person, but I think if we condition the permit and say that the city, that the applicant
Reference the letter. as we
reference the
did.
letter, and then the city engineer may change some of this as answers come in relative to his questions. So I don't want to make it just a stagnant part of the letter. It has to be, you know, it should be the letter itself and as amended or altered by the city engineer. Whether you do that in writing is another thing. But you can't. It's got to be reasonable amendments. So
Well,
I mean, so that'd be my motion, as opposed to just walking us through all this, because I think we're going to get really bogged.
I take your point, but I did just want to note that that what we're addressing will be the elimination of, or discontinuing that, which I don't think is controversial.
Correct.
And there was specific language in the letter, and your motion wouldn't undo any specific recommendations, but I would just note for the record that under item 4, they've specifically suggested a condition that says proposed improvements to the Hadley Mills Road and North Bridge Street intersections shall be submitted to the DPW for review and approval prior to the issuance of a building permit for the project. And the installation of a stop sign is conditionally approved subject to confirmation by the applicant that MUTCD provisions for a stop sign are satisfied. So I just wanted to make sure that we included that in the public record and in the public discussion. And then further, without requiring you to go into every other thing noted, I just did think we should mention that it was noted that there was no information on the plan relative, and these are technical things, you know, and I get that, but relative to roof drains, stormwater piping, and that's just to be sure that the proper drainage and all that on the site is going to be addressed. So I won't.
And did that say the
belabor-
pending building permit as well? Because there is drainage that goes into the stormwater system.
What it says is that you would locate and verify the condition of any existing stormwater piping and separate this piping from the sanitary sewer system
Right.
prior to application for the building permit.
Permit,
As you may know, we have issues with that here in the city.
Right, I've heard a couple of things. And the other
Yeah.
thing too, though, to go to number 4, we have, well, Jeff can go to, no, go right ahead.
Number 4 is,
Number 4 has to do with
That's the intersection.
stop sign and the intersection, and I know you
Right.
touched on it.
Right, and
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to go into a whole lot of
Sure.
detail on it, other than to know the steps in the procedure, that's all.
So maybe you could educate me a little bit. So when we do this as a contingency, does that mean that this will not advance to be voted on by full council until these property issues are resolved?
No.
Okay.
What we're saying is the opposite, that we are referencing these issues in this letter, and we're gonna make it, it's proposed to make it one of the conditions that the issues in the letters will be addressed to the satisfaction of DPW. As a condition of the special permit, is
Right.
the suggestion. Not that you have to do it ahead of time. Counselor Lisi?
Thanks. So the idea is that we give you an approval, but you don't actually get to conduct business until all the conditions are met.
Okay, so does the 20-day appeal period still go into effect and everything else? Okay, that's what I was curious about.
Yeah, assuming we, yeah.
Because with a lot of these issues, and we're working with the city solicitor on this property as well, for the fee interest and all the things that legal is handling, that, because they made everything contingent upon closing, number one, combining all the parcels, of course, after this is resolved, and any other abandoned easements, so that's.
Right, and I'm just trying to make sure that we get the whole list that encompasses
Mm-hmm.
all those things when we're making a recommendation on the permit. And at some point, might like to suspend rules for legal to weigh in, just to be sure we have covered all that. It's a fairly complex land issue.
The council wants to
Bob
address.
Perrin?
Sure, I just
Mr.
wanted to
Perrin,
make
thank you.
one comment. I did hear Jeff from VHB describe some proposed improvements to the entrance of Hadley Mills Road, which I was glad to hear. I haven't yet seen those plans. It's conceivable that once I'm provided with those plans, that I could have an opinion to provide to the full city council, and the full city council acts on this application and perhaps not have to have that condition as part of the final approval.
Yeah, so my suggestion might be, given the city engineer's letter, if we could potentially satisfy him as to one or all of the items, some or all of these items in his letter, in advance of May 7th, he could provide a letter to full city council saying, I believe that A, B, and C are satisfied, the others should remain conditions because I haven't seen them.
That would be fine process.
Okay.
And while we're on it, we have, there's an 8-foot fence I applied for a special permit for. I thought someone might ask me the question. So we have 8-foot fences back here. It's denoted on the drawings, which require a special permit for fence. So that has been applied for.
Special permit for 8 foot.
Yes,
For
ma'am.
the height, yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Counselor Bartley?
Yeah. Hey, Rick, I think you can, I don't think you, I'm not gonna need you
You don't
standing
want
right,
that
I'm not gonna need you standing right there, no, just that for a second, if you don't mind. No, it's all good, but actually, the way I understand the special permit conditions, clearly not all gonna be satisfied before
Right.
you start operation. I mean, these are conditions that, there's gonna be a living document, so it's gonna be ongoing. So for example, the job thing, okay, well, that's ongoing, that's one. So, but if it came to the point where you're up and running and the conditions are not satisfied, the engineer sends a communication to city council, if not satisfied, we'll take a vote to revoke your special permit, and that'll be the end of that business for the time being, until such time as the city engineer is satisfied. That's how a special permit should work. So not everything has to happen by May 7th. And by the way, I don't even know where this is going to go tonight, so I don't want to jump ahead of us as to May 7th. I'm going to make just two things. One is I'm not sure where you guys came out of the gate with a 24/7 right out of the gate, because that has not really been the past practice of this body. So I'm certainly not going to support that coming out of the gate. I'll just say that. Now I would say that an hourly time frame, because you don't need a 24/7 business starting right away. I would like to hear from you as to what hours would you reasonably expect to need for the first year of operation. I'd like to hear, and then I would make that motion to, whether it's 7 days a week, whether it's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., or something to that effect. But from what I heard you said, that 24/7 is aspirational. That is not an imminent type of thing. And the second one, before we go too far, before my time's cut off, but on the security part, I didn't hear a whole lot about that. This is a very serious franchise of operational people here, so I'm not worried about it. But I did want to hear a little bit more specifically from the security people, because as we know, there is one way in there and there's one way out. So there's no way around that. You're not going over the canal. I don't think you're building a separate bridge over the Connecticut River. So I want to hear that addressed, and I also want to hear, and we don't have to drill down into specifics because I know this is sensitive and might be proprietary, but at this point, this is a cash business. At this point, I don't really know too many financial institutions in Massachusetts. There may be 2, maybe there's 3. I don't think there's more than that are accepting even cash for this. So I'd want to know, what kind of, I don't know specific details, but just a little bit of general background on the security part, especially with relative to the amount of money you're obviously investing a lot of funds into the procurement, and it seems like you're going to invest a comparable amount into the property itself. So I certainly want to hear. I want to hear a little bit about the security part, but I'll take the hours first, and then the security second.
Yeah, so we can talk about the hours a little bit. So it might very well, everything doesn't have to be done in a standard, say 8 to 5 shift. The plants can be essentially service grown, fed. Extraction can work independently of the light schedule of the plants, and then shipping, manufacturing as well too. So it's where we might not be running 100% in all those areas. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week initially, but we will have guards on premise 24 hours a day, cleaning staff at night. So we'll essentially go from, depending how fast or quickly we can get each phase brought on with the RIC, it will scale down. The bulkhead of it will be done during the daytime, so call it 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then kind of scale down to a skeleton crew. Call it a skeleton crew for now. Yeah.
Okay, so it's 7 days a week?
7 days a week. So the plants do have to be serviced, watered, manicured, essentially 7 days a week. So
this body's been very warm to having operations be 7 days a week. We haven't been super warm to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, that being said, what does that mean? Does that mean we would never do that? No, because this has been a 24/7 mill town for 200 years before the paper industry crashed in whatever it was, the 40s or whatever. So what does that mean? Well, it only means this, that if we put hours, I'm just one vote, so there's that, but if we put hours in that are reasonable and acceptable to you, could you come back in 6 months' time or a year's time and apply to amend the permit? Because now you're saying, oh, counselors, but now we've got 80 employees and we're really ready to start going. Or you can see, you can, when you do your planning, you can see out, we're ready to go 24/7. Could that? I would say yes, and it would.
Yeah.
And yes, that is another step. It is another step, and there may be some burden to that as well. But it gives us, or it gives me anyhow, a chance to certainly hear from you. How you doing? Were these numbers way off? Were they close? What's the benefit to the city of Holyoke? I mean, that's the benefit I see from my perspective as a voting member. Now, maybe other councilors might have a different perspective, and if they do, fine. Then I'll lose a vote. But I would say that's the reason I look into it as not to be critical or not to be burdensome. It's just to hear more from. This is a brave new world, as we all know, and we're all learning at the same time. Whether you have you got a big law firm out of Boston and a very important business people out of a foreign country, that's great. So this is all new to us. So we just want to, I just want to take it as, one step at a time as if we can. So that's that. So I'd like to hear from you. Really, if we were going to pass this permit, what hours do you need? 7 days a week? Well, that's fine. You need 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. or whatever it is. Do you need those same hours on Sunday? I'd like to hear that, and I'd like to have you come back on feedback, and then I want to hear the security piece.
Sure. And I can definitely speak to what we did in Florida, and I'm kind of referencing that as well, but it has been our proven track record and our methods of manufacturing. Initially, the bulkhead of the cultivation division, so it's broken up into essentially 3 different sectors. The bulkhead of the cultivation will be done from, in our opinion, as it stands right now, 7 a.m. to 6 at night. Then more of the real live manufacturing acts, which would be extraction, batching, distillation, etc., can really take place in, call it a standard first shift, second and third. So I think it's probably more of a function of what we're going to scale up and get to. It's a matter of how fast and what the market demand and the product demand would kind of dictate. I know that's kind of a vague answer. It's tough to say at 6 months we'll be here, 8 here, but it's kind of ebb and flow, and it's a living organism. So.
Well, there's many moving parts. You can't possibly say that right this second, but what I heard you say is if we said 7, I'd motion, because we've had 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We could say 7 a.m. to, 10 p.m., something along those lines, 7 days a week. Until such time as, in a few months, you're going to know how fast you can scale things up.
What Kevin was referring to is the way that we balance the power load on essentially the current facilities is half the building would be off at one time, then the other half would be on, essentially with the light schedule. So the crews essentially work AM time, they work in the rooms that are on. At lunchtime, it would essentially go dark, work ceases in those rooms, and then subsequently jumps to the rooms that turned on at that time period too. That answer your question?
I'm just going to say,
Councilor Bartley has the floor if he has a clarification.
You'll have a chance to say what you need to say. It does answer my question, but can you have security in there 24/7? Yes, I would hope you would. I would. Can you have the power on overnight? I would think you would. But as far as hours of employment for your regular shift employees, I don't see why this has to be a 24/7 license right now. And I haven't heard you make the argument that it needs to be.
Yeah, the power is the power is essentially, if the power is on to the grow operation, that's essential to work. We can't work in the dark inside the rooms. Manufacturing, the power can be on continually, extraction, batching, all that areas too.
Talking about how this benefits Holyoke all the way around, I think that in this business, and I think I said from the start that this is going to be phased. This is not going to be a jump. Now, could we have 25,000 square feet open and need staff 24 hours a day? It's a living organism. We will always have security there. Also, in a community like this or any other community, there's some people that have to work the weekends or have to work at night, or they can't have a job, because they have children, because they have responsibilities. So I guess when I sit here and wonder about moving forward with a business, I'm just trying to understand why we would want to put a constraint on how many hours we should be open. We're certainly not going to go faster than what is profitable. So in phasing, I could probably sit here and tell you that over the next 6 months, we will probably employ roughly around 80 people when we get to the end of 6 to 7 months. But it's a living organism, and then living, like they were saying, with the code for energy efficiency. We have light times, we have dark times. When you're in there, you don't even know if it's morning or night, because of the lighting part. So from an employment standpoint, yeah, we'd like to be able to offer jobs around the clock because there's maintenance. as well. I mean, there's constant cleaning that goes on. There's security that goes on. There's things that need to be done. I mean, it's a big 140,000 square foot building with 72,000 square foot of possible canopy.
Okay, well, that helps me. I
Okay.
appreciate that. And I just want to hear about the security part if I could.
Actually, while we're still on the topic of the
Well,
hours,
I
I'd
mean,
like to
Madam
offer-
Chair, Madam Chair, can I just get my questions answered, and then we can have a
Well, you brought
roundtable
up-
in a second?
You brought up the point about the hours, and I want to make a comment
We'll-
about the
we'll-
hours.
We'll come back. We'll hit everything, because I have other things too to go back to.
Do you want to hear about security?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're eventually gonna have.
Good evening, everybody. Andy Klein, American Alarm and Communications. I'm one of the system designers. I work for David. I believe that your question was specifically about one way in, one way out, which this drawing does not show very well, but this one does. So when we talk about one way in, one way out, it's actually a benefit to us in this case. Right now, our current security system designs have cameras off of the building looking specifically focused on the driveway. When I take a security camera and I focus that lens in, I'm able to pick up the most amount of detail. The goal is always license plate. The reality is that what nobody tells you is that license plates in Massachusetts are inherently hard to capture, especially at night because of glare off of headlights, white reflective background. It's a rough ride. That said, TrueLeave has selected for a security camera manufacturer a brand called Avigilon. Avigilon's a US and Canadian made product. It's top of the market. It has no cybersecurity flaws. And it is, when the CCC comes in and sees Avigilon logos on equipment for our 37 sites that we've been involved with in Massachusetts, they go, oh, Avigilon, that's one of the really good quality equipment manufacturers. We've had that commentary before. So that's discussing the one way in, one way out. The perspective plan would be that for things like cash or material shipments, vehicle's going to come in, go straight into the Sally port. That fence then gets locked. Then, if personnel are entering into and out of the facility, they'll be using access control at the door. Inner door, outer door. You cannot open the inner door until the outer door closes behind you, and it's all electronic locks.
I'd also make the point that, as you saw in the city planner's comments, pardon me, all of this is subject to the approval of the chief of police. I would hope that the city council would defer to the chief of police on security matters. They have taken an extensive look at this. There is a plan for the cameras that are in the application. Obviously, that is clearly a exemption from the Public Records Act for what should be obvious reasons. But you have available to you that camera and security plan, as well as the additional materials that we provided to the chief that, as you heard from Captain Moriarty is okay with, and we're expecting the chief to sign off on. So I think that, in the world of delegation for the city council, relying on your experts employed by the city, including your chief of police, I think is reasonable, appropriate. And
We do rely on the experts. We understand that. So I
Been a few of the security
I think we generally do. But to give a little, I think we're just doing our due diligence by at least addressing some of the general principles about security. So thank you.
all right.
Thank you, Counselor Bartley. Yeah, I do think, I understand that you want to move forward, and it's a big investment, and we really appreciate that. But we've been pretty consistent about doing our due diligence, with each application in a consistent fashion, so
as you
that's
should.
all you're getting.
Of course.
Counselor Lisi.
Thank you. So I'm just going to make the point that this particular business is located on, an area of land that's really isolated from, neighborhoods, and really it's on a piece of land that's isolated from adjacent residential neighborhoods. And I don't think that there would be a huge impact on the neighboring area, which is the flats. And so I don't see a problem with 24 hours of operation on that parcel in particular.
Well, maybe if the applicant has taken a look, because I know you did a whole study on the traffic and the mitigation and that, maybe you could just speak to that?
We did I'm not the traffic engineer, but we did a traffic statement, basically just kind of outlining what's there today, and then the trips that we're gonna be bringing to the site. But moving forward, we will have a full traffic report completed at that time.
Do you have a trip generation report done?
We have a chart.
It's
Yeah.
right here. So when you did that, was it done in the context of 3 shifts or 24/7 that you were doing the counts and the spread
Yeah,
of the
that's it.
traffic? I mean. It was done in 24 hours. And when you do your shifts, do you do 8-hour shifts or 12-hour shifts or some other shifts?
For the benefit of those listening at home, 8-hour shifts.
Thank you. You knew that was coming, right? And while Counselor Lisi's looking at that report, I just wanted to go back to the educational component that was referenced way early in the presentation. And I know that that is sort of an optional activity for a business to do as a service or as a give back to the community. One of my personal concerns is about the edibles, and particularly the edibles that are very appealing to children. And we're hearing, as this industry is taking off, the first wave of news is always everything that's positive and perfect and wonderful and miraculous. And then later on, you start hearing about the emergency room trips and kids getting into these things. And whether you agree or disagree with a lot of government regulation, we have everything regulated from you can't have a candy cigarette because smoking is bad, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'd just be interested to hear, sort of like in a casino, you have the warning for people who are gambling too much, relative to the edibles in particular, and then just the use, particularly recreational in general. Would you see a space in the community for sort of preventive education relative to this industry?
So I'll turn it over to Kyle. I think one thing just to remember is that we are an MME here, so we're not retail. Certainly, this is
You
an
will
issue.
be.
Not
No,
necessarily
Well,
here.
maybe not.
Not necessarily here.
Not here, but I mean, as a company.
correct.
I know not for this specific, I know you're just looking for manufacturing, but my question is more general.
Okay.
Right, but there's still gonna be.
Yeah, so I can certainly add some color to that.
It's just a question.
And it kind of comes in a few different manners as well. I think probably the number one thing to take into account is the extremely tamper-proof packaging. Multiple layers, multiple seals. It's really even stuff that it's pretty hard for me to get open, and I'm classified as an adult, so certainly not easy. What'd you say? Yeah, by who, I know. And then, so that is an extremely important measure, and one that we observe currently in Florida as well. So it's tested vigorously before it's ever released to the public, approved by our regulating body, which is the Department of Health, the Office of Medical Marijuana Use, probably similar to the CCC here. So that's I think probably number one, just on the accessibility factor or function of it. And then number two, we do not use any type of cartoon branding, not packaging that looks attractive to children. It's very much something that you would get at a pharmacy package, and that's currently what we do. Very professional label with the person's name on it, what it is inside of that tamper-proof container. Yeah, so it's essentially our demographics not targeting that whatsoever. Yeah, so does that help?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you. Counselor Lisi, did you find what you're looking for?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that the traffic counts were 24 hours, which they are. Not that I
Okay.
doubted you, I just wanted to see it.
A street sweeper we had to do it again.
I actually want to suspend the rules and ask a question to legal, if you don't mind.
Okay, do you mind if I just do the public
Oh, sure.
portion so that I don't forget it as we get into other discussions? Okay. So at this time, I would just like to hear if there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak in favor or in opposition to this special permit. I think everybody's associated with it, but just to be safe. Not seeing any. Counselor Leese, you made a motion to suspend our rules so legal can approach or answer some questions. All in favor?
Aye.
Crystal, my question is about the way, when we put conditions on an application. So we say, this permit is approved given that these conditions are met.
Right.
And that means that the approval only typically, I think, takes effect until those conditions are met. And there was a question here earlier about what exactly the conditions meant or how they impacted City Council's approval. So if we move this along and City Council approves it, we move it on our next City Council meeting of May 7th, but we say we have all these conditions that need to be met. It's approved upon these conditions being met. Can you explain what that means and how to interpret that?
I think Councilor Bartley kind of touched on this a little bit, but it's really going to depend on the condition, because I know some of your conditions are based on hours. So the special permit has conditions of, for example, some of the hours were, 8 to 8. If they were ever operating outside of those hours, then the special permit now has grounds to be taken back because those conditions aren't being met. Some of them, we approve on condition of receiving a valid security plan approval from the police department. Obviously, that would be prior to opening operations. So it's really dependent on the condition. Some of them are the hiring requirements that you've put in. I mean, that's going to be a constant flow and reporting back to the city council. So there's no one answer to that. It's going to depend on what the condition is.
But for example, I think the ones that are like the sticking points are going to be the approved letter from the chief of police regarding the security plan, the fire department. I know we have like a signature here, but I think we want something more formal that says that they believe they have the access they need to the site. And then the traffic improvements and stormwater improvements, like those would all need to be satisfied before they're able to operate their business. The special permit would be approved, but those sorts of things would really need to be satisfied in order to meet the conditions that trigger the approval or the ability for the business to conduct its activity.
The ones that you're stating, other than some of the site improvements, that may be a timing issue. I would say, assuming that they get their plans and permits all in place, it's more of whether or not the city council could then say, wait a minute, we have these conditions, you haven't done X, Y, and Z, you need to stop operation under your special permit until this is met. So as far as receiving the security plan, as you mentioned, the fire department, as you mentioned, those we'd certainly want to see before they start operations. But site improvements, it's a little give and take on what those site improvements are and what's holding it up. But assuming that they're making progress, I can't foresee that the city council would pull the permit and say, well, the stop sign hasn't been put up yet, so you can't open until Friday because it's supposed to go up Monday or something along those lines. But it's all dependent on what the conditions are.
But as long as progress is being made in those other areas, then we're not going to pull it.
Right, and I mean, it's a city council determination there.
Yeah, thank you.
Crystal, while we're under suspension, is there anything in our ordinance that speaks to the hours specifically?
The only thing in our ordinance is deliveries, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., and it's basically to prohibit the large trucks, I would assume.
Otherwise, we don't.
But otherwise, we don't have any hour
I
requirements.
didn't think so. Thank you. Yes, if you, on the mic, please.
Just a quick question. I mean, I spent time with the lieutenant today at the fire department. He wrote approved and okayed on that plan. I would gladly get a formal letter, and I'm sure the chief is ready to sign the other. But I did notice on both the letters from planning and from the engineers, well, maybe not the engineers, but from planning, it talked about these issues being dealt with at the time of the building, getting our building permit. Because again, this stuff is going to go through fire. I brought in 10 submittals. They went to fire. They went to all the entities that were listed. And then planning does us a favor by answering some of these or posing some of these questions so that they're dealt with up front.
Okay, thank you. So the last correspondence I have from our planning department relative to this special permit application is dated April 19th. Is everything that's in here the last communication that's gone back and forth between you folks and planning?
I went and sat down with planning. You can see the response.
I see.
Yep, and they're
I
included.
see the responses included with this. I'm just wondering if there was anything else after this that should be part of the record.
Well, no, aside from the things that I marked, which had to do with the activities, is listed on there as number 4.
Yeah.
And then number 5 had to do with the Holyoke chief. That's why I requested the letter from Captain Moriarty.
Yes, and just to touch on, not the chief of police, but the chief of fire, they're going to be talking about access and everything relative to fire, but they're also going to be talking about the hazardous materials and the storage and other things like that.
Correct.
In that letter. And so that's what we're,
But there's been no letter from fire as of yet.
right, and that's why you're hearing us talking about needing it.
Okay,
as one
but
of
let me
the-
ask you this, because I'm a builder. So typically, if this wasn't cannabis, this is something that would go during the building permit time. When we got a building permit, then everything goes to fire related to alarm, sprinkler, hazardous material, access.
I hear you on that,
Okay.
but in this case, because of the nature of it, and because it is a special permit, all of these things are part of the conditions that are required by the state and also by our local ordinance to have in order for the special permit to be granted. In the case of the security plan, the fire sign-off, DPW letter that we've referenced, it's a different order.
But Councilwoman,
what-
when does
what you're
fire have, when do they have, what's their time limit? They've had the submittal for 21 days. I'm just asking, how
Well,
does
no,
it
no, no.
work?
I'm not arguing with you that
Oh, I'm not
they
either.
haven't given you something verbally. I'm just letting you know that if
For
we're
the-
moving forward on this, we will be listing as a condition that we get the letter from the fire department that addresses not just the fire access, but these other matters as well, which do come under this, and they've been noted, say, in other
Okay.
applications. They address what they choose to address.
Right, and the only reason I asked that,
Right.
and I heard you talking to the guy before that didn't follow the ordinance, I followed it to a T.
Gotcha.
And not one place in there did it have a list of items that needed to be approved by fire, or I would have made a list and I would have got it approved. So what I'm saying is, where do I, or how do I understand what I need to get with them on so that I can get, or is this something that
Okay,
at
all we
permit
need
we
is
can
the
get?
letter that they have submitted with the other special permit applications.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
That's
all I need, I'm sorry,
Yeah, it's
yes,
easy.
ma'am.
It's easy.
Perfect.
It's not complicated, but it's just one of the steps. That's all. But I hear what you're saying.
I just like being thorough.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Okay.
It's really, we need a truck route plan approved. It's very specific.
I-
Eh, It's this one.
It's stamped right there, and he wrote on it. And it's one of the plans that Jeff Delano went through too, as well. So I got his signature here, and then he wrote on the plan itself, right there, he wrote okay.
Right, which is fine, we're accepting it, but we're just asking for the other things because they also address the other things relative to storage because it relates to fire safety. That's just what they do, or what they have done, I should say. Let me put it that way. Thank you. Are there any other questions from any members of the committee?
No, I mean, I would offer a comment if I can.
Sure,
Yep.
Counselor Lisi.
So I do agree that this is one of the more comprehensive applications that we've seen. not the most, but more, one of the more comprehensive applications that we've seen. And I'm really happy to say, I think that they're going to do their due diligence to work on filling the gaps that exist currently, and I'd be willing to make a motion to adopt the special permit this evening pending certain conditions related to those outstanding items.
Okay, so, but before we get there, is there anybody else from the applicant or the departments that has any input that we should consider in committee? So I need a motion to close the public hearing if committee feels we're there. Council Bartley.
So we're all set from planning and economic development, is what you're saying?
Well, so the correspondence that I have from planning is dated April 19th, and to the applicant's point, they have addressed the layout and materials through tonight, if you accept that. They have talked about the activities that will be occurring on the site in detail, floor by floor, which they had stated they would describe in the public hearing. I think it would be fair to reference the letter dated the 19th in the same way that we're going to reference the DPW letter dated the 18th as a condition, just that remaining items will be completed.
Well, if I may, I don't think this, so this would be a first as well, so that we don't have we have a presentation by the petitioner, and we're not referring this back to tabling this and hearing further from the planning board relative to tonight's presentation. So that would be,
It's certainly within.
that would be, I mean, I
purview.
keep hearing May 7th, and that's all well and good, that the petitioner is saying that, but again, we haven't done that once. I get the fact that they're very organized, and it's a great presentation. And then furthermore, we just heard from the planning board an hour and a half before our last petitioner was here. So, I mean, I'm not saying the planning board is the be all and end all this, but just in our experience, the 8 or 9 we've done of these, we've always tabled it, and we've heard from the planning board to give us further guidance. And on top of that, we don't have the final sign-offs from the police department. I know they're pending, but we don't have it, and so that would be a first as well. That we're, and now we're saying we're conditioning. Well, of course, it's mandated. It's not a condition to a permit. It's mandated, and you all know that.
Approval would be conditioned.
So the security plan is mandated. It's not a condition of a special permit. It's mandated, and the applicant knows that. I mean, I'm of the opinion that we should just do what we've done and table this to the next ordinance committee meeting, and then take it up at the second city council meeting in May. And this is not going to slow anybody's process down at all. But that's me.
Council Lisi?
Thanks. So if we look at the letter that planning submitted on the 18th, or 19th rather, which is not hours before this present meeting,
I said the last one.
That's fine,
If-
but
well,
I'm
if you
just saying
listen-
that
well, if you
there's a
listen,
difference. Stop interrupting me.
Just
Thank
start.
you.
David.
Order.
Well, don't put words in my mouth.
Order.
Juan.
Okay.
Don't put words in my mouth.
I think
Counselor
you need
Lisi
a
has the
5-minute
floor.
recess.
Counselor Lisi has the floor.
Thank you. So the letter from the planning department dated April 19th says that really all the questions that they had have been addressed by an applicant response that was given to them the day prior. And there's only a handful of outstanding issues, one of which is the letter of the chief of police approving their security plan. One is a letter from the fire department detailing the vehicle access. And there's really no other things that have not been covered in the course of this meeting here or in the application itself. There's a reference to the physical design and pedestrian crosswalk issues, but they're all kind of sidebarred out into the engineering letter that Bob provided for us. And I think we had talked earlier about creating a condition that all of the issues in the letter that our city engineer has provided be addressed in order to, as a condition of approval.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to weigh in? Okay, so these, for summary for the committee, these are the things that I've written down that have been mentioned more than once, but I'm just doing this for clarity as a summary. So as conditions, should we move in this direction? I have that, and so for me, I hear the logistical concerns that happen with the police department, because normally they would have been to us. So I would be comfortable personally if we condition this as long as we have the documents before the city council meeting.
Of course.
I am not going to be warm to anything if it's not received, and
I think we just went, as we all know.
I think it's a
there's
logistical issue, but, so anyway, so that's one, the security plan. 2 is the fire department letter. 3, I think this is a state law anyway, but that, I would note in that you're gonna bid to licensed waste removal companies for that, which you discussed.
But they should provide us a name at some point when that is.
Well, but they're gonna do a
completed.
bid process, and so that once you've completed that process, you could provide us
I
with
would
a
respectfully
company
ask,
that
because
we
it's a special permit, that we
engage.
not have an individual entity name, because then we link to that entity, and because we have to bid it, we don't know who they are.
Right, and that isn't unusual, but you could let us know what after.
course.
Yeah, and so that's just around the credentialing more than anything. And that the letter of April 18th, as provided by DPW, will have the issues in it addressed to the satisfaction of DPW
Engineer.
and the engineer,
Can it be,
Robert Perrin.
can it be just the engineer sees the one who wrote the letter?
It can be the engineer, because you never know. But, yes. He's right. Yes. And this will be something that will not necessarily be done, we realize, before the city council meeting. We not understand that's a building department process, and et cetera, et cetera.
I think if the chair is chair,
Mr. Bart,
Yeah.
Councilor Bartley?
Mr. Bartley's fine.
Sorry.
It's okay. If we're going to go this route, then I think you're going to also have to reference, because there's a couple, the planning board member, while we skimmed over a second ago, the planning board letter goes into a little more detail about the easement, about signage. So I think you should probably reference that in the conditions as well. Because
Okay.
I don't think all those points were addressed tonight.
I mean, I'm happy to address them if that would be valuable. They weren't raised, so I didn't, but I can if you.
Well, at this point, we have about 25 more items on our agenda.
Understood.
I would prefer to reference the letter, and then you can just answer it, because typically we get these in writing, and/or the planning staff can send us a letter and say, check, check, check. Also, that would be acceptable. So if you're all set with them, and they say all these items have been addressed to their satisfaction, they can update us today or tomorrow or the next day and let us know that. So I would just offer as a condition that we reference the planning
Second.
letter of April 19th as well. And then what,
Outstanding issues.
yes, the same as with DPW, the issues brought forth in the letter. And then what is the wish of the committee relative to hours?
24 hours, I don't see anything wrong with that.
I have no problem. I'll be honest, I somewhat, if I may,
Counselor Murphy?
I know that this is probably the most detailed plan that I've had to deal with since I've come back on. And,
Bless you.
while I had some things to read, obviously, we've taken a lot of information. As you know, I was even questionable where the site was when I got here. So, I mean, I would, my instinct is to be okay, but I'm not as comfortable as I would like to be. I would not be opposed to tabling it with the idea that we just make sure we get everything answered before we have our next meeting. It would be May 21st if we did that, and it would be 2 weeks. But again, to me, and I know you offered to take me down there tonight, but I think you were not going to be doing that. And I certainly would like to go and walk it again. So now I have an idea really where it is and not be mistaken by the addresses, so I can really get a feel for it. And again, my instinct would be to go 24 hours, 7 days, because if it's jobs that you're creating, I'm fine with that. But I would feel more comfortable if we tabled it and I had the chance to do that. So I'm going to make a motion that we table it.
Second.
And that's not debatable. But can I offer a point of information, legal? I would offer this point of information, that in the interest of time, there are 5 Tuesdays in April. So there would be the opportunity, if the committee wishes, we have ample time to give notice of an agenda item so that you could have your.
I'll table to April 30th.
Yeah, I'd be
You know,
fine.
problem with that.
Could you chair in my absence? I have a conflict that night.
Oh, I'd be honored to chair in your absence.
Well, so.
Honored to.
So in this way, I'm just throwing it out there that we could meet the needs and the
Yeah.
concerns.
We talk about
So-
business friendly, I'll tell you. So
So,
I'll amend,
we have-
I'll second that motion to table it, granted we continue to April 30th.
To April 30th.
Continue the public hearing, table,
No,
continue.
No, we're closing the
We
public
close
hearing.
the public hearing. We're tabling to April 30th to take
this up-
in the
take the final
information
information.
that's
Oh,
outstanding
great, perfect.
relative to the department heads. Okay?
Could
So,
I ask a question of clarification?
yes.
So this would be so that we could provide information that otherwise we would be providing to full city council?
No. So this would make it unnecessary for the information to have to be provided to the city council. If you have it by next Tuesday and you provide it to the committee, 3 of the conditions go away.
The conditions are that
Because
you
they're
meet,
the letters and the things that we've been,
Fire, police, and what else did I wrote
fire,
down?
police, and the
Planning.
answers to
Planning board.
planning.
planning and engineer.
But those items,
Well, engineer, you never get to the
Engineer will
planning.
stand, at least some of it
Yeah, parts of the engineer.
will remain in the best case
But
scenario.
really, at this point, you should be able to meet all of the outstanding questions in the planning board letter.
the 3 we can, because we actually presented the ones that Bob, he just doesn't have the plans yet.
Yep.
And then, very confident with both the police, and then I guess I'll get with fire and ask what they typically issue, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and then we would come on the,
30.
30th.
would we come, or we just present the documents?
Well,
through
you
Ryan?
don't
It's just the
need
answers to the
everybody.
questions.
And then after that, it would go to city council, full city
In the
council?
same timeline,
Okay,
in the same timeline.
okay.
So the 29th.
How about that?
30th. 30th.
See how it all works out? See that amazing?
So on the motion to table, all in favor?
Aye.
And it will be continued to the 30th. Counselor Bartley will be chairing, and from the read of the room, I'm hoping Counselor Lisi and Counselor Murphy will be here because,
Well, don't
You're
forget,
the
Matt,
quorum.
that's a point of order, Madam Chair. We do have a rule now that allows us to
True.
bring in other members. So, and if there's,
True,
if,
but-
you'll be missing one, if there's another city councilor here, I will have that city councilor sit for that part, okay? Because just in case we have just make sure we have an odd number, okay?
given the number of them here tonight, you might have to invite one.
And so would that be the only item on our agenda that day?
We could
I'm-
probably take up a couple more things.
So it's up to the
It would
chair.
have to be, yeah, up to the chair.
I'll get with Dave on
Okay.
that.
Responses to we throw these responses in to Ryan, to the clerk, prior to the meeting?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And
You
really,
can
to the,
do
to the planning
emails
board.
like you did are fine.
Yeah.
Too, to the committee.
Okay.
Those are helpful, actually. It gives us
You
more
get the
time
police
to
report,
see
fire
what they
report,
are.
yeah.
Spend more time here than I do on the job site.
So just.
Hopefully not for long.
So I know what the items you need to have. So there's the letter from
Security plan
police,
approval.
right, which I think we all recognize there's an exigent circumstance, which is not in our control. There's a,
The fire
Death.
department letter, yeah, we
right.
we do.
The fire department, and then the other two elements may not, the engineer may be ongoing for some things. For instance, the
Correct.
discontinuance of the
And then it
road.
will just remain a condition,
Right,
which is not problematic, it just won't be eliminated.
correct.
We can satisfy what the city engineer had requested for the street crossing, because we've already done it, it just hasn't been turned in.
And then city planner, a similar type letter.
Same thing. If the planning department writes in and says, follow up from our April 19th letter, all the remaining issues were addressed and to our satisfaction.
Okay. Okay.
That works.
Yep.
Otherwise, answers to the questions can work, but the easiest way is if they're done, that they just say they're done. It's like, I like the KISS theory personally, but hey, some people like a lot of paper. And that would do it, and then the only other remaining question is the hours. Which we haven't addressed as a condition. If the committee wants to do it, make a motion.
Well, we will. So we
If you want to
we table
tonight.
this now. What, we tabled it. Can we move on with the agenda?
You'll
We
have
take
to
it up
take
next
that up
time to figure out
Tuesday.
if you want to limit the hours or
Okay.
not.
Okay. All right, so you're all set for tonight. Thank you very much. We're almost through it.
Thank you.
One quickie, can I send in a letter or a schedule kind of outlining the future?
On the microphone, please.
Great, yes.
Yes.
I think, yeah, you want to make some sort of compelling case.
Thank you.
Sorry. Just point of order to the chair.
Yes,
Just-
Councilor
yeah,
Bartley?
Just to my friend, Rebecca and I, we do this all the time. There's nothing personal involved here.
I don't really appreciate it, though. I
I
do
just-
appreciate the
I-
apology, but I don't appreciate the way that the language and interruptions take
There's
place.
no language involved.
Okay, so-
Here we go, no language, but that's all right.
So just as a point of information for the 30th, we also did not read in the standard conditions that we put with every one.
I'll read them in next week.
Oh, all right, just,
I'll read them in.
Do you have them?
okay.
For the next time around?
I do.
Okay.
I just pulled one of my city council meetings, so I would have it. Okay, so at this lovely hour, we get to item 4.
Are there some of these we can take together, Madam Chair?
I think we could probably take them all together and just separate out the ones that we're not going to follow the
Can we
engineer's
do-
recommendations on.
Well, which ones are here from Mr.?
Let's, how
Mr.
about
Parent.
if we invite Bob in, if he would like to come?
Step into our dungeon.
You know, how about if we go in the order that works for you? Because we can suspend our rules and try to make this as smooth for you as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess if you'd like, we can start at the beginning and keep getting all the way to the end if we can.
Okay,
Keep it
but
open.
what I do want to do, though, is can somebody just make a motion to suspend the rules and take up items 4 through 32? No, wait,
30.
30.
Motion to take up items number 4 through 30 under suspension of the rules.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Bob.
So as the chairwoman knows, many of these items we actually didn't see until late last week, given to some glitches in terms of how council orders have been transmitted. So what I tried to do is I tried to respond to everything that I could to the best of my ability today with the goal of trying to get through as many of these as possible.
And we appreciate your
Some of
due
those we're going to have to
diligence.
come back to, but I think a lot of them we can get through tonight.
Yeah, and we really appreciate that. And to all my colleagues on the committee, going forward, when we're at the city council meetings and all these traffic orders come up, if any one of us can happily remember to say copy to the engineer. He would be grateful. I did send it out in email, but sometimes if we hear it, it may,
So if you'd like, I can just,
that would be great.
I'll read the order. The first item, item number 4, was an order that Councilor Martinez had issued on December 18th of 2018. The order says, ordered that a no parking sign be placed on Walnut Street 10 feet on each side of the private parking area of the juvenile court. My response to this was to provide the committee with the language that would be necessary to approve that order should the council approve. I'll be honest, I don't have firsthand knowledge of any parking issues at that location, so it's not anything I've looked at or studied at this point. But if the subcommittee and the councilor is aware of there being issues and would like to move forward with this order, the language I've provided would be what it would take to do so.
Okay, thank you. I believe the counselor spoke to it at the time she filed the order, but I don't recall the details.
I would imagine it's line of sight.
But, so why don't we just take his recommendations and go item by item and then come back and vote them, Counselor Bartley?
I was going to say, because this is going to be pretty much a lightning round, I'd rather just vote on it
As we go?
while we go. That'd be my preference.
All right.
And at this point, since the counselor's not, who fought, Gladys? I mean, I'm sure she did it for a reason. I mean, I don't really see why we wouldn't pass this.
All right.
You know?
So, all right, let's go one by one then. So that's a motion to approve?
Second.
Put into legal language, yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay.
Okay, item number 5 pertains to the same general location. It was a order filed by Councilor McGee, indicated that ordered that a no parking from here to corner sign be installed around the entranceway to, it was written as 1 Elm Street, and that is a little bit confusing, of the new Holyoke Juvenile Courthouse. I believe what this pertains to, taking a look at the layout of the courthouse, is the driveway that enters onto Suffolk Street, right at the corner of Elm Street.
Okay.
And that's the way that I've interpreted my
Okay.
response. So if the council was amenable to approving the order that Councilor McGee had filed, the language I've provided there would do that. And what that does is that restricts parking for about 20 feet, well, it's a little bit more than 20 feet, about 30 feet from the intersection.
On Suffolk Street?
On Suffolk Street, from Elm Street northeast, I think it is, if I have my compass direction.
That's great. So
Correct.
I'll make a motion that we approve it and put it into
Second.
legal language.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 6, Councilor Burgos had filed back in November. This is one requesting speed bumps, temporary speed humps be placed on Anderson Ave, and that a speed study be done at the corner of Sycamore and Anderson. I did indicate here that we are finally getting to installing the temporary speed humps on Bemis Road this week. We've marked it out in Bemis, and unfortunately the crews have been out patching potholes and putting stop logs in the river last week and this week, so they didn't get it done quite as quickly as I had hoped, but we're planned to getting installed by the end of this week. Once we take care of Bemis, because I know that one's been out there for a long time, and have recommendations, then we would move ahead to Sycamore and Anderson.
So I'll make a motion, we table this until,
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Item number 7 was an order that Councilor Leahy had filed on January 15th of 2019 that essentially says, or requests that the City Council and Department of Public Works make certain that they advise the Police Department and Fire Department anytime a decision is made that might impact the day-to-day operations of those departments. And I think it pertained in particular to the temporary road closures that were done in the Ashley neighborhood area. My note here was certainly we will do this going forward. I believe we had a lot of coordination up front on Ashley, but we may not have notified all the departments of what day we are putting the temporary closures in, and we should have, so we shall do things like that.
Motion order has been complied with.
Complied.
Second, oh,
Just
under
under
discussion,
discussion?
Counselor Bartley?
Bob, on your, how often do you update the website? Or is the website, let me rephrase that, how often is the Public Works portion of the city's website updated?
Not as often as it should be, in
Right.
fact, very infrequently, so we could make definite improvements in that area.
Right, so, I mean, I don't really think we're at the point where we're sending out text alerts and all that kind of jazz, although, you know, God only knows how many times I got calls for reverse parking and all that. Oh, and you might note that my mother and father get them in Florida too. So at the 239, for some reason, they get the reverse parking notice down there. But I don't think we're at the point yet, but if you're gonna make these updates, I mean, I think you can do it pretty efficiently on the website if somebody would sort of take the bull by the horns and direct constituents there.
I would agree, yes.
Thank you.
So on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Complied with, right?
Yes.
Item number 8, Councilor Valentin had filed an order to remove a handicap sign on January 15th of this year. This one is interesting because I think we just put the sign in, or at least council just approved an order to put a sign in, and now the constituent has moved, so the order is filed to remove the sign. I'm not certain the sign was ever installed. So
Oh, well.
I think it negates that action by the council.
Oh,
We still need to remove it from the ordinances.
From the ordinance, we'll have to take it out. so.
Right, I've looked in the latest ordinance table, schedule of parking restrictions, and it isn't in the scheduled parking restrictions, so it,
So it's probably in the queue, so it'll just have to be taken out. But, so we do need to still act
Correct.
on it, so
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
Motion to accept the engineer's recommendation?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 9 is an order that Councilor Murphy filed on March 5th of this year, ordering that no parking be allowed on the odd number side of Jackson Street from the corner of South Bridge Street to the alleyway. Councilor Murphy and I spoke today a little bit to better clarify what side of Jackson Street we're looking at, and it actually is Jackson Street from South Bridge heading towards South Summer.
Correct.
On the
North side.
easterly side or northerly side of the roadway from the alley to from the alley to South Bridge Street. So it's half of that block from the alley heading towards Main Street on the right-hand side.
So as long as you know that, I don't need to, right?
do have a clarification now, and
Okay.
given that time was getting short today, I didn't get a chance to actually put the text that would go into the ordinance table, and what I've indicated here is if the subcommittee moves this back to the council, I'll make certain I have that language in advance of the
A
council.
motion
action.
to approve and to put into legal language?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Item number 10 is an item that Chairwoman Vacan had filed, and that was February 5th of 2019, looking for no parking signs adjacent to the driveway at 16 Dale Street. I did note that the city council ordinances already prohibit no parking within 5 feet of a driveway, and I put out that perhaps no further council action is necessary.
Maybe enforcement.
Well, I think I agree with you, but I think what's happening, because there's all that pressure over there with the apartments, is that even though it's a law, without something saying don't park here, or no parking here to corner, unless that's there, and I'm not
There
aware.
currently isn't a sign, no.
Yeah. I think that's why they were seeking it. There have been some other no parking signs put up in that neighborhood for that purpose, so what's happening is they're not going where the signs are, and then they're going where the signs aren't, even though it's illegal. So,
It's a tricky situation because you can end up putting signs along the entire street, and it's a slippery slope, if you know what I mean. But again, it's your
So-
prerogative, so.
so if it comes back to me relative to the people who are having the issue, then the only recommendation I could give them would be to call the police for enforcement.
It is an enforcement issue, so if the sign was up there and somebody was disobeying the sign, that would be the recourse.
So if the sign isn't there, will the police say it's not enforceable? And I'm only asking not to be difficult, but because on Route 202, it is a state law that you cannot park on it. But people were parking on it to go to the reservoir, and we were told that the police could not enforce the no parking because there weren't any no parking signs. At which point,
sorry.
we added no parking signs at the reservoir. So I'm a little confused on that one.
I can't answer on behalf of the police department, but what
I
I
know.
can to assist on this is I'll reach out directly to the police department and see if I can get a clear answer from them in terms of what they need in order to be able to enforce an ordinance.
All right, well, that would be great.
Well, If I may,
Table them.
why don't we table it till next Tuesday?
Yeah.
So motion to table.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Okay. Item number 11 is a order that Councilor Leahy had filed on February 5th. Unfortunately, since this is one I just saw a couple of days ago, some of these I'd like to take a look at and think about
So motion to
a
table?
little bit more, so I don't have a response to that.
Well, just to add some information to it, where Southampton Road meets 141, there is no queuing or stopping or anything.
Oh, yeah, that's,
It's just a road
Right.
with people turning left. I don't personally see it, and it has a speed limit of 35. So,
well,
I don't know, but anyway, that's just a little FYI. On the motion to table, all in favor?
Item number 12 is an item, or an order that Councilor Murphy had filed looking for sidewalks in several areas in South Holyoke. We did just get a copy of the order. I have not run it by CDBG yet, but based on my knowledge of the area, I would expect that all these streets would be CDBG eligible.
Nice.
Assuming that they are, we'll place these streets on our list to hopefully be done this year. Council is probably aware that the funding situation is a little bit uncertain relative to what CDBG funds will be available for sidewalks this year, but it at least will get put on the list providing that they're eligible.
Thank you.
Thank you. So do you want to table it?
No,
For follow-up?
No,
No?
I'll follow up with the DPW
Oh, all
and
right.
community development. I originally thought this had gone to the DPWs, because when I saw it on our agenda, I thought, I had sworn I
Oh, you
had-
thought it went direct?
Yeah.
Oh.
When I filed the order, I was like.
Oh, okay. So motion is complied with then, is that your
complied with, yep.
motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item number 13, Councilor Burgos had filed on February 19th. If I understand the intent correctly, there are really two separate items as part of this one order. So that's what I tried to do, at least the way it was presented on the order that the council clerk had prepared. There was a reference to parking at the entrance to Daybrook Village, and then there was a reference to parking in front of United Bank.
There are two, yeah,
Okay.
that's two separate orders.
Okay. It did show up as a single order.
It did, oh,
Okay. I dealt with them separately, so perhaps the intent
Good job.
has been met. I realized they weren't right next to each other, so clearly they were two different locations that we were looking at. So, similar to previous orders, I do note that the current ordinances prohibit parking within 5 feet from the curb return, of a driveway, alley, or private road. The roadway there is a driveway, it's not a road, so it doesn't fall into the 20-foot setback from a street corner, which is the setback from a street corner. It could be expanded if the council felt, because of the high volume of traffic in and out of the village, as well as traffic on Jarvis, it could be expanded to 20.
okay.
And it would take a vote, and I provided language here that would be supportive of that vote.
As a practical matter, do you think this is generally a good idea from a practical point of view? It's been an issue for employees trying to get out and
Yeah,
see.
Right.
I visited
It's
the
been
site.
the
Yeah.
main problem.
I do have a bit of knowledge of this location, and yes, I would agree that it's an area where treating it a little bit more unique, because we can't do this for every single driveway in the city, but it's a
Exactly.
driveway that
Yeah,
is,
it's very narrow.
Right.
Like, it's very
Okay.
bad. It's needed, yeah.
All right, is there a motion?
Motion that it be complied with?
Second.
Sure. Second.
Well, do we have to approve
For the
this?
ordinance?
well, that's the first part of it, right? What about the second part?
The second part
Okay.
was
second part was United Bank.
United Bank.
Yeah, so before,
So we have to approve Daybrook, right?
So,
so it'll be
motion to
13A?
approve,
13A is okay, approve, okay.
approve the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to approve the whole thing.
No, we're just talking, well, right now, we're talking about
Daybrook.
Daybrook.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And there's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So the second part of this order, splitting out the two separate orders, is pertaining to United Bank, right at the corner of Corser Street and Northampton Street. I did note for the council benefit that current ordinances prohibit parking within 20 feet of that street intersection, so there is already a prohibition 20 feet northerly on Northampton Street. There is about 55 feet between where that 20-foot restriction applies and where the driveway 5-foot exclusion applies, where vehicles can legally park now.
So is that like 3 cars?
About 3 cars, 2 cars, 3 cars. Then there's the bank driveway, and then there's more parking to the north of the bank driveway.
Counselor Bartley?
I'll go, if Juan wants to go first. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
You want to go first?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm having trouble recalling ever placing an order or filing an order for United Bank on Northampton Street.
Do you know what? I mean, I don't want to say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you were using that as sort of a reference, saying like at the bank.
Okay.
I have a feeling that's how
Yeah,
they
is
got
that-
merged together.
Yeah.
I think you were using it as an example that people might know if they didn't know Daybrook. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Because I don't remember, I've never had issues with United Bank or anything.
Copied from the
So
agenda.
the text that is in,
Doesn't,
No,
I think,
Counselor Bartley?
if I could get recognized, yeah, I just want to.
Counselor Bartley?
Okay. Counselor Anderson Burgos was nice enough to sign on to, we co-filed an order. Almost this exact same language. And I filed it because I frequent United Bank, and coming out of there, it's really a blind spot when you look to the south. So it would be my hope, and I'm not sure if Juan feels the same way, but my hope for that portion between Courser and the bank driveway, that we can have a limited parking span of, say, 30 minutes. If that's reasonable, if that is feasible, I'm sorry. Is that feasible, Bob, to have like 30-minute parking?
it's definitely, there are some areas in the city that are currently posted with time periods. It's, the more unique parking restrictions, again, as Councilor Lisi knows, because she has a standing order basically of solve the city's parking problems, the more unique situations you create, the more challenging it becomes to defend, why don't you do it here, why don't you do it here, why don't you do it there? But there are unique cases, and those are the tough decisions.
Well, that one right
sometimes
there
get
is
to
a
be
unique
made.
case, because it's become that Courser is blocked off by employees of HMC every day of the week, and now they're spilling out into Northampton Street and blocking up all the parking there. And it's negatively impacting bank customers and bank employees. So the manager has said to me, please do what you can about that. I mean, I don't think she's interested in taking away parking, but if we have specific ordinance up there, if there's 3 or 4 parking spots, I'd love to have them delineated with stripes and say 15-minute or 30-minute parking only, and that will take away the employees of HMC from spilling out into Northampton Street all day.
If that was the committee's desire, the table or the box that I put in here, the last box on the right-hand side that says no parking from here to corner, would be modified to describe, it would be posted 30-minute parking only, or some consistent wording that the city has used elsewhere.
Well, I
So
don't want to speak for the committee, but I mean, that's just my 2 cents on that particular spot. If everybody's familiar with it, and if Juan's particularly
If it was
familiar
your
with
order, so let's do
So-
it.
it. Are you good to go
I'm fine with it.
with 30 minutes?
15,
Well, sometimes people go
We'd have
and
to
sign
wait in
a
line.
mortgages.
30-minute
they better
parking.
make it quick.
Oh, yeah, no. So 30, you're okay with 30
Yeah, I'm
minutes?
fine with 30 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
then I'll make a motion to amend that to a time-limited 30-minute parking.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
On this topic, because I literally cut and paste right off the posting on the website, so the words that I hear are right what was posted. So Ryan will probably have to do a little bit of work to separate these into 2 orders for city council action.
Right.
13A and 13.
Yeah, 13A, Juan nailed it, 13A and 13B.
Anderson.
Yeah, let's do that.
There you go.
13.
And I will update this
Or
table
you
so
could
it'll
say
be
Anderson
ready.
Burgos Bartley if you want, if you really wanted to. If you wanted to.
On the next order, what I'd like to do is take item number 14, item number 15, and item number 18 together, because they're dealing with some of the very same things, in particular, dealing with crosswalks and
Okay.
safety issues at in particular at Metcalf School. One of the things that we talked about previously was that we felt there was a potential to reallocate some monies that were approved in the comprehensive signal project that was approved by the council last year. If there was an underrun in that budget, to be able to put those monies into like type of projects. The original council vote wasn't pertaining to these locations, but the council, if the mayor put forward a request to modify that council vote, that vote could be modified to include Dean Tech, Metcalf, and other locations.
Okay, how about if I just read the orders in?
Sure.
Okay, so item 14 was filed by Councilor Bartley, that the city install a crosswalk across Northampton Street near Washington Ave and Lawler Street. The purpose is to improve the safety of students getting to and from Metcalf School. Item 15 was filed by Councilor Bresnahan, that a school zone speed limit sign very similar to the sign located at Lawrence School be placed in front of Metcalf School at the crosswalk Northampton Street, and that all other schools be reviewed. And item 18, filed by Councilor Bartley, City of Holyoke install appropriate signage and school zone warning lights near the following schools on Northampton Street: Center School, Metcalf School, and Blessed Sacrament School, and Ian White School.
So I think the DPW's response to those three items would be to work with the city auditor and work with the mayor to put a modification to the previous council bonding authorization forward, such that funding could be provided, allocated out of that already approved bond to fund those improvements.
Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, I'm very happy to hear about that. I really want to thank the mayor for getting beyond. I never heard the phrase underrun, so that's, that's almost unheard of in government budgeting, but if there's an underrun, that's wonderful, and we can use these extra funds wisely to really help out the students crossing pretty busy roads.
Yes.
So, if I may.
Sorry.
Councilor Lisi?
So, I know that there's, I guess all of these orders are for crosswalks, and I think that you were talking about the granting for signaling, the traffic signaling. So, would the remedies that you're looking at include both signaling and crosswalks, or can you squeeze crosswalks alone out of the under budget, or?
The item number 14 was an order specific to crosswalks, so that is something that we can do without additional funding.
Okay.
That said, the location of that crosswalk would need to be coordinated with the location of the flashing school zone light. So when my response said we're evaluating location and that we would implement that as part of a single project, but that doesn't require additional funding.
Okay.
But to put the lights in would require the reallocation of funding. And I think, so 15 was relative to the speed sign, and 18 was same thing, similar signage, the flashing signs, and I believe that Councilor Murphy had filed a previous order that isn't on this list that dealt with Dean as well.
We missed it. It's buried in the jacket.
Dean crosswalk, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. And we
Oh,
also,
would you want to modify it and add Dean?
Dean actually got sent out to, because public safety met on Dean with crosswalk and school traffic lights and other things so they're working on that, and I've been told that, and Bob kind of indicated that the same thing, that there was gonna be some additional funding, and at that point, we also said in Public Safety Committee that we should really make it for all the schools as much as we can, so
Well,
that's the goal.
But if we are going to be specifically adding streets to the bond because it was specific.
Yep.
In order to get Dean in, you need to modify it here now, I would say, to have it be able to be considered. Yes, no?
I think it actually has to start with the mayor
Yeah.
proposing a modification of the original bond vote.
Well, right, but.
And that goes
well,
then to the council.
I get that, but in terms of having
I'll
the
make an
street
amendment
on
to
a
add Dean.
list to be considered, I think you want to amend it here now, so it'll be in the queue.
Yeah, I'll second the amendment, because
All
I
I'm
think it
suggesting.
goes right in line, but that's something we passed several years ago, that any amendment to a bond has to be,
Come back. yeah.
come back here.
Right.
Because it wasn't coming back here, Terry.
So we have a motion to add Dean School, and there's a second, all in
Yep.
favor?
All right.
And that's to item 18, just so it's in the queue.
Okay,
Thank you. All right.
so 14,
There's no other
15.
needed action on these, right?
So
What do you-
our motion's what?
Right.
What's our motion, Bob, on this?
What is your
Are you going to
motion?
say comply?
Because it's not complied with, so we're,
It's not. Table till we see?
I'll be
we-
tabled until we come forward with the modified bod language.
yes,
Yeah.
okay, so all these, which ones, 14, 15?
14.
14, 15, 18.
Okay, motion to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 16 is a similar issue relative to a no parking sign to be installed near driveway at 970 Hamden Street. Likewise, there is a prohibition currently on parking within 5 feet of a driveway. I will respond in the same way and get a commitment or confirmation from the police department what they need in order to enforce
Okay.
that.
Motion to comply
It
with.
may need a sign. If they need a sign, then
That's a table then.
Table.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Table.
Oh, sorry, table.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 17 is an item in that, an order that Councilor Lisi filed back in November. Other than doing research, I don't have the grand solution at this point. And
Can you, so do you, have you done some research where you could say, like, you know, some communities do this, like in a vague sense, or do you not want to report out just yet?
it's all over the place, so I'm not even certain. I want to collect it all. I want to put it in one place, and then just because Springfield does it, or Northampton does it, or Somerville, Mass does it, doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing for the city of Holyoke. But at least identify what the spectrum of solutions are, and then try to fit some or more of those to the city.
Yeah, I think that we are not in desperate need, but the need is there and it's growing. So I do think it's the right time to understand what that spectrum is and figure out what the right solutions are for which different areas, because we have a lot of different types of areas in the city also. And increasingly, I think we're seeing some conflicts between business and residential parking because they have different needs, different hours. So I look forward to hearing what you're able to piece out of that collection.
Motion to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 18, we've dealt with already. Item number 19 was an item that order that Councilor Valentin had filed. Unfortunately, I don't have a report and update on
Okay.
that. That was
Motion to table.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 20 was an order that Councilor Anderson Burgos had filed last fall. We did get out there and we did attempt to do some traffic counts. It was inconclusive and we have to redo it. We were trying to count the number of trucks going down Monroe and it wasn't very successful.
I'd like to table it then.
Motion to table.
Second.
All
So-
in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this was an order that Councilor Bartley had filed at the beginning of this month. Again, we just saw it very recently about do not block the box at the end of Carlton Street.
Oh.
So would like to understand it, look at it and understand it a little bit
And
better
that's-
before making a recommendation.
Pretty new.
Yeah, as a chair, no, this is my annual or biennial attempt to do something about this little stretch of roadway, so maybe this will help. Motion to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item number 22 was an item that Councilor Anderson Burgos had filed in March. This was relative to Isabella Street and Forer Avenue. Again, there is presently a prohibition of parking within 20 feet of a street intersection. That might suffice if people truly comply with that. Perhaps if the police department needs that reinforcement of a sign there, that may be necessary.
So it's another follow-up with the PD like the other two?
Yeah. You'll
I
have a
think
nice
so.
handful of.
Yeah, because this is, as Councilor Bartley had mentioned, this is a spillover from HMC, Odette Medical Center. They're parking and there's children, it's next to the synagogue and next to that church. And there's school going on, and so they're parking their cars, and it's making it hard for any type of deliveries. So what the president or the principal of the school told me was that if there's ever a fire, God forbid, it's going to be difficult for a fire, for
To make the turn?
apparatus make a corner. It will not be able to. I go through there with my car, and I only have a little Honda Coupe, and it's hard to turn that corner. I can imagine a fire truck,
Okay. And it may be one of the more unique cases where, again, you need signs to reinforce it, and then enforcement if that doesn't do it.
So you want to
Motion to
table
table.
and follow up?
Yeah, table and follow up, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
1470 Dwight Street, this is an order that was filed by Councilor Tallman in March 19th of this year, indicating that no parking be allowed at 1470 Dwight Street in front of the gates, and requesting that striped lines be painted in front of the gates. Again, this is a tricky one. I understand the situation. I forget the name of the company, something Marine, Action Marine? is
Action
it?
Marina.
Action Marine.
Oh, okay.
And they already have signs posted on their gate.
Don't block.
Outright, you legally are not supposed to park in front of their driveway.
Right.
People do. Perhaps because it looks like it's not a driveway, but it is a driveway. When the gate is closed, it may not look like a driveway. I haven't driven every street in the city, nor looked at every street, but the vast majority, if not all of them, the white lines, the fog lines, continue past driveways. We don't break lines in front of driveways. For instance, we don't break the line in front of Kanzaki's driveway, big wide industrial driveway. So we don't make provisions to stop and start and stop and start. We only do that at street intersections, and you'll see a break in the white line.
So people see the line and
So
they
they
figure it's the street.
But
But there is the
But
gate
that's
with
the
big
case
signs on it.
everywhere in the city right now. So it is, again, it's prohibited. It's a slippery slope. If we start cross-hatching the front of their driveway, are we going to be
Oh, I can
cross-hatching
give you
the
five
front of
that
every
will
other
want it
driveway?
tomorrow. They're
Yeah.
already asking up in Ward 5. You know who.
Well, what do you think, Bob? What should we do here?
I think in this case, what I did suggest was, perhaps the private property owner, could put additional signage on their gate. Don't park in front of their gate, because they legally can do that. And they can call the police department the moment somebody's parking in front of their driveway. And that ultimately we can't do anything more than that.
So the owner can put signage?
It's their fence.
Okay.
But what about, do we do yellow paint on the curb anywhere? Because maybe that would help if we did yellow paint on either side of the curb cut for the driveway.
Yeah, we do it on curbs, but there's no curb there because it is the driveway.
Yeah.
So we could do it 5 feet beyond the driveway where the curb starts up again.
Maybe that would help to highlight that there is a cut there.
It might, again, it's, where does it stop sometimes, unfortunately? So I tend to lean to try to do less, because it all compounds. Not only do you
It'll
do
just
it everywhere,
become more.
but then there's one more thing that we have to maintain. There's one more gallon of paint, there's one more, it can get carried away sometimes. So I don't know if the property owner has attempted to call the police department and what the response has been. And I'll tell you, I will talk to the police department specifically about this location, and see if they're amenable. If they get a call from Action Marine and there's somebody parking in front of their gate, if they say absolutely, we get the call, we will respond, then I think that's the
Because I
solution.
could see that being a big problem.
All right, motion complied with.
It's going to be on the list of check-in, so why don't we table it so that we could hear back to see if we need to take additional action?
Sure.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 24, another recent order from Councilor Burgos. That's one that I haven't looked at yet, the request for no turn on red signs at the end of Hillside.
Motion to table.
We'll definitely look at it, but haven't done so.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 25 is the removal of a handicap sign because it's no longer necessary. I would assume that the committee would vote to approve that, and when they do so, we will provide the language necessary to the council.
Motion to approve?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's approved 5-0.
Item 26 was an order from Councilor McGee. I don't know the background of this one. It's fairly unique if you look at the wording that is suggested in front of 17 Beacon Avenue.
It's maybe school hours, and they need to do a drop-off. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. Drop off and pick up.
Is there a business there?
No. I don't think so.
So I don't know if any of the councilors have any,
Oh, wait, well, there's no business there?
Being from
No, not on
7
Beacon.
a.m. to 8 a.m.
There's a building on the
And
corner
3
where it
p.m.
meets with
to 4
Pleasant Street.
p.m.
Is there a daycare?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
But it would be a home daycare.
So I can reach out to Counselor McGee and get more of the background here, and then,
Didn't we just have a
again, the
big
more
thing?
unique you make these, the more problematic they can be sometimes.
Yeah, how can we do,
We
how
just
can we do
had
a,
a
par-
big debate over that, right?
yeah, how do we get to, how can we start legislating for one house?
That was the whole big debate we had on,
Yeah.
what was that street? Pine.
Yeah.
Let's not go there again.
Yeah, I think we should just look into what is going on here.
Let's table it.
Let's table it and ask.
Right, I'll try to get the backstory, and
Okay, motion to
that may
table.
shed a little bit of light, and it may not be what we think it is, perhaps.
I don't remember.
Item number 28, I believe, is pretty straightforward. It's a long explanation that basically says, looking for a handicap parking location at 48 Belvedere, and don't see any reason.
Okay, so, let's see, 28, 29, and 30.
Wait a minute, did we do 27?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. 27 wasn't done.
There is no
27
There's no
was,
27.
Oh, wait.
that was relative
Hang
to
on.
weights and measures, and I wasn't quite clear from
I don't have a 27.
what that was even intended,
It's
who
not
that was
Jared
intended to.
Hobbs, It's on the agenda, because it wasn't traffic.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah, it's not really his.
You should
my bad.
It's about fees. We're not really sure who to ask about that.
Well, we have
I
only a
think-
part-time weights and measures person,
I
right?
think we sent it
We
to
have
your
now-
department because we didn't know what to do with it.
And I guess the catch was it didn't get sent to our department, so it
yeah.
just kind of went out in limbo there for a while.
So you just have it now.
So just for clarification, you are looking for the DPW to, I don't have a copy of the
We just
agenda.
want an updated fee
Okay,
schedule
so-
because it hasn't been updated since 1997, and I think there's a number of departments that have kind of started looking around going, oh, like, the fire department and other communities are charging X amount for this disposal.
Okay, so just to be clear, so item 27 was filed by Counselor McGivern, order that the city council review and update, if necessary, section 102-34, the collection of fees, fee schedule of chapter 102, weights and measures of the Code of Ordinances. This fee schedule was last updated in 1997.
Well,
So I think it entertained,
I'll make a motion to refer to legal and get a recommendation in 30 days.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right,
So it's referred instead to legal?
For recommendation. Is a month good, Crystal?
you can
Okay,
make, you sure?
thanks.
Okay,
Okay, so 28, 29, and 30, if I could entertain a motion, is to
Suspend the necessary rules, take up as a
Oh, well, I guess we
package.
already have them
we
up.
did.
We did that.
They're all before us.
We covered all of 30. Item 28, filed by Counselor Leahy, was the handicapped placard for,
48
was
Belvedere.
28? 48 Belvedere, right? And then 29 was a handicap sign at 127 Beach Street for Freddie Rodriguez, and 30 is a handicap sign for 290 Chestnut Street for Esnelli Negron. So we did receive feedback from the Disabilities Commission that they're recommending that they be approved.
Okay.
So all we need to do is refer it to legal for legal form. And then we don't have a meeting, well, we didn't have a meeting next Tuesday until recently. But there is that week for legal form if that works. So the
Motion approved.
Yep.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That takes care of
Not too
28,
bad.
29, and 30.
And I think I'm done.
Thank you very much, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here for the public hearing, too. That was,
It's always
Thank you
interesting
for
to
that.
listen in and contribute when I can. Thank you.
thanks again.
I'll be calling you about the courts, Jackson courts. I'll call you tomorrow. Come in late, you can take a nap.
Those are okay.
So,
Okay.
can we take up 31?
Motion moved from table.
Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 31, filed by Counselor Bartley, that the city council amend its ordinances to create a committee to study the costs and benefits involved with the city of Holyoke establishing its own animal control facility. The expectation is that the committee, once created, will produce a report to be reviewed by the Board of Health, City Council, Mayor, and other relevant departments. Counselor Bartley?
I would like to only because we're so close to budget time, Madam Chair and committee. I'd like to sort of see how the budget rolls for this, for FY '20, before we start doing, because this really came out of what happened last year at budget time, right? So we cut it in half, and we never refunded it, because I don't think the city has the financial capability to refund that other half of it. So let's see what the mayor comes up with. I'm sure when not Brian, because Brian retired, but Brian's replacement, and then I think it's Eric Velez. Okay, I think Eric, when they come in, like, hopefully we'll have them before us for budget time. Like, maybe we can hear more about what's happening with animal control before we do this.
So you want a table?
Well, I'd like to table it till after the budget time. We've got it all queued up. I think it's a pretty straightforward ordinance. I don't think it was too taxing on Crystal, because we really done the work prior with the Whiting Farms. So, but I think now it's, because let's just see where the budget goes. So I'd rather wait till the summertime and,
Okay, so the motion is tabled to summer.
yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item 32? Oh, item
Motion to take
32.
32?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So item 32 is ordered that we amend section 7.10.4 of the marijuana facilities permitted districts to reduce the distance requirement from any pre-existing public or private school providing education in pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, or any grades 1 through 12, measured from the lot lines of impacted properties to 200 feet for cultivation factories only, as permissible under Mass General Law 94G, Section 5B3. All other marijuana functions would continue to require a 500-foot buffer. So I've been advised by legal, and I should have thought of it myself, but we do
need a
have to
public hearing.
advertise for this modification. Counselor Bartley?
Can we speak to it or no? Okay, now?
Only procedurally, not,
Not
We
substantively?
can't really
Okay,
debate it.
I do have a substantive point on this,
It
but
re- Yeah, 'cause
no, all good.
it requires a public hearing.
No, all good, all good. So, motion, so the motion is to table it?
and
or-
public hearing?
advertise a public
Mo-
hearing.
we-
Oh, okay, so motion to, well, we gotta worry about our budget too, so we don't know what our budget is, because Ryan's out of money, I think. So, I would just point a word to the chair, I would wait till, I mean, is this pressing, Terry?
Yeah, it is.
So motion.
Well, we're out of money, and he's out of money in
Motion
our
to
budget.
advertise for public hearing as funds available.
Didn't Todd file something at the last meeting to kind of move some money
I
into
don't know if
that
it
line
got
item?
filed yet or not.
Ryan, there
I
you
thought he
go.
did a late file. I thought that's what,
There was talk of it, but I don't think it ever came up.
I thought it was a late file.
Maybe it was, and maybe it's in finance, I don't know.
Do you recall?
I don't recall.
But I think,
I
but
know we
anyway,
talked about it, but I
I
don't
think if
recall what
we say it this way, then he can move on it.
Yeah. Yeah, if we
And the
can
funds
move,
are
that would be
available.
great.
Right,
That's the motion.
yeah. So all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
What are we missing?
Motion to adjourn.
That's it. All in favor?
We're having a
No
second.
debate.
I think we covered every possible.
All in favor?
Aye. Is this like second,